And we're live. Happy Tuesday, everybody. What's going on? Hope everybody's having a good beginning of your week. Everybody, Clint's here on time today. Good to see. All right, let me find my link, and you know the drill. I think Clint's going to pull a rabbit out of his hat. There goes my notification from YouTube. Good. They've been slacking a little bit lately. That's better. I can hear myself. That's not good. Let me move that headset over there. I don't want to be feeding back through my microphone. So hope everybody's having a good Tuesday. What's going on, Cave Daddy? All right, let me open up these links. I'm not going to be able to see y'all for a minute. So talk amongst yourselves. They used to say that on Saturday Night Live back in the day. I used to love watching that show. Nowadays, you can't hardly watch anything without it getting political and stuff. Everything's polarized these days. I don't like that. But not here. This place you can come and get away from all that silliness. So let me get these links out. I think a lot of people watch the beginning of my podcast and like, well, this is boring as hell. He's just sitting there, ain't saying nothing. He's just idle chatting. And they don't realize I'm trying to get links out, so I'll repeat myself several times during this, so people that are just now tuning in will realize that I gotta share some links, man. Gotta get it out there to my friends and share it. So bear with us while we do. And if you're new, let us know. If it's your first time tuning in, and if you're new to the craft and the hobby, make sure we know it. And be doubly sure that you ask any questions. If you have any doubts at all, and you're not sure about anything, be sure to ask you questions. That's what we're here for. That's 100% what we do here. We're not here to talk about us or each other or promote anything other than education. So, and I hope y'all had a chance to catch Friday's show with Wayne and Amanda and Woody. That was a great show as well. We don't get a lot of good shows on here, so when we do get good shows, I like to promote them, because anything that's promoting education and the hobby and the craft, I'm 100% behind. And I hope y'all can hear me okay. I need to turn this thing up a bit. Probably might help. Been having a little bit of trouble with that new microphone. I'm not sure what's going on with it. But hopefully y'all can hear me okay. But in my gaming, I've been getting some conflicts and some crashing. That's not good. And hopefully be able to find out what's causing all that and get rid of it, because the game I'm playing, if you crash, you lose all your goods, all the guns, ammos, weapons, armor, everything. You lose everything you've taken into battle, and that's not good, especially if you all kitted up with the best stuff. For those that don't know, I used to play a lot of video games when I was younger. Now I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, but now I kind of Warzone. But now I'm playing Arc Raiders a little bit now. It's a little change of pace until they can get the majority of cheaters out of Warzone. But I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. For us old codgers, it keeps our alertness, right? Keeps us alert and our reflexes up. So I kind of go down there. I knew that was going to happen as soon as I'm sitting here. So kind of going slow a little bit so I can get all these shared, and I didn't. So I'll share the rest of them. I'm at 9 to finish sharing these. There you go. I didn't get to share it with Tracy. Anyway. All right. What's up, Cave Daddy? Good to see you, brother. Man, I took me a little napsy before this. My contacts are kind of fogging up on me. I had to put some drops in my eyes or something. Hard for me to read good. Everything kind of blurry a little bit. What's going on, Carl? Good to see you, brother. What's up, Steven? Hello from Tennessee. Well, welcome to the group, legend. For all the newcomers, make sure you like and subscribe, hit that bell, and that way every Tuesday and Saturday when we come on, it'll send you a little notification, let you know we're online, a little reminder. If that does bother you, don't leave us. Just hit that notification, and you can turn them off. And I know a lot of people don't like that. You know, they'll be in the middle of a dinner date or something at 8 o'clock, and they get that little ding, and you're like, what? Oh, them again. So if the notification bothers you, just turn that notification off. You don't have to leave or anything. I know people used to leave Facebook or unfriend me on Facebook when I played those games on Facebook back in the Farmville days and the Fishville and Mafia Wars and all that stuff because of the stuff we'd post, right? Like, you don't have to leave me as a friend. There's a little drop down. You just hit and turn off notifications from me and we can still be friends, right? Known y'all my life, so you don't have to unfriend me over a game. What's going on, Earl? Good to see you, brother. Another knowledgeable person in the world knows quite a bit. We've got quite a few people in the community that are pretty knowledgeable. Yes, it's good to see. Good to see a lot of people that's been at it a long time and worked in distilleries like Clint and others that are helping educate and promote the hobby. It was a dying craft, you know. It was a dying craft before the show came on. That's one thing I really appreciate the most from the show is it helped you know, pick up a dying craft because it was you know, it was a forgotten thing. Except that, you know, most people in the city, you know, never even heard of moonshine. You know, they might hear about it in folklore and books, and every once in a while in a movie or something, or a country song if they, you know, accidentally hit a country radio station. But the show really helped it out a lot, and helped the craft and helped keep interest up, and you know, definitely helped promote things for sure. What's going on, JJ? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, David? Yes, sir. Having a great night. And a restful one. I had to take me a little nap. I had a little big dinner, and I was like, man, I had to take me a little nappy. What's going on, O'Shane? It's good to see you poke your head out of that rabbit hole. Well, you've been reading up on, brother. No, sir, it ain't easy being cheesy. You remember that commercial? Yeah, it's funny as shit. People that ain't seen that probably think I'm stupid now, don't they? But that tiger, I guess, would come out there. It ain't easy being cheesy. It's like the, what's up? I do that all the time, too, from that old Budweiser commercial. That was a funny commercial. Me and all my buddies used to do it every time we'd college or see each other. What's up? Yeah, it's funny. Again, if you haven't seen it, you probably think I'm crazy. All right, our first question. Hey, what's up? I was wondering what are thoughts on copper versus stainless steel steels? Good question we get often. There are benefits to both, and there's drawbacks to both. Biggest benefit, let's start with copper. Copper's biggest benefit is that it removes sulfites from the distillate, right? So even in the boiler, it will help remove those. In the cape, where the steam comes up and hits the cape, any time that vapor comes into contact with that copper, it's removing any sulfites that may. Now, not all distillates are sulfite heavy, so some it's more beneficial for certain runs than others, and sulfite buildup can be based on several different things, whether it be the fruit or veggie that it's that you're distilling or fermenting, or something that was produced during fermentation from stressed yeast. That can increase the production of it. So it helps remove the sulfites. So that's its biggest major benefit. Another big benefit to copper is it's easy to make, right? So it's easy to get a sheet of copper, hammer it out, bend it, and solder it, and make your own steel. Not so easy to do with stainless, because you have to pretty much be a welder to do that. You can't just go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and get you a torch and some lead-free solder and make your own steel. And it's copper's easy hammered out. It's easy to bend. So that's another big plus for copper. Third thing is the way it dissipates heat real well. You'll see some of your finest cookware in the world is made with copper, and that's because of the way it transfers heat and good even heating when like in frying pans and stuff, and when you're cooking. So that's probably the three most major benefits with copper. The biggest drawback is keeping it clean and maintaining it, and keeping it from oxidizing and building up a copper oxide that can be toxic. So the little green stuff, the filigree that gets on there, it's pretty if it's on a lantern or something like that to make it look aged. But the mash that we put in there is fairly acidic, and as you know, pH crashes right during fermentation. Sometimes so much so that it causes stuck fermentation. So it can get quite low on the pH, and that's not really good with copper, and can cause some issues with copper. So you never want to leave backset in there. So keeping it clean is a must, and maintaining it is essential. So that's going to be the biggest drawback on copper is keeping it oxide free. And if you keep using it, it's not a problem. But idle time, if you don't run a lot, it can start to oxidize and get that green oxide on there, and that's toxic. Anytime you see that in your distillate, just use it as weed killer. You can use it to clean your steel with, but you need to make sure that you rinse it afterwards with water or steam or something to get even that out. But it will help remove things that are soluble to alcohol, right? So it makes good, and it's fine to use as a weed killer, or put on your grill to start your charcoal, or things of that nature. But it's not something that you want to consume, and it's not something that you want to rerun. You can get it out of there. No, it's just, you just can't see it once it's on an atomic level. You can't really see what the badness is. Once you see that, just pitch it. It's a small batch. It's never worth your health. That's why, when in doubt, just pitch it out. That's because really, this is a great hobby, but you don't want to ever jeopardize your health just over a $20, $30, mash. So it's just never worth risking your health. Now, I see a lot of people throw stuff away because it's got lacto on it, and it looks like, oh my God, it's horrible, and they think that the world's ended and they've got bacteria and it's the worst thing ever. And it is a bacteria, lactobacillus, but they're not all bad. So some bacteria are yogurt, right? So some of it's good, some of it's good for your gut health, but know what you're looking at, and if when in doubt, just pitch it. If you're not sure if it's lacto or not, look at some pictures of lacto. It's very distinguishable from either the bubbles or the filamentous growth, where it's got like a cobweb, appearance. You'll know lacto when you see it. You can look at quite a few pictures of it and see it. If it starts getting colors, If it starts kicking off spores, if it starts getting fuzzy, time to go. Don't scrape it and try to run it. It's just not worth your health. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, it'll be all right. I've done it. I didn't." It's just not worth risking for me. You know, others it might be, but I don't want many of my viewers getting sick. You know, anybody that I'm teaching getting sick. You know, it's just not worth it. You know, go get you another $7-8 bag of corn and try again. I mean, you know, it's just not worth your health and a bag of corn. But the big pros on stainless is it doesn't get that copper oxide. It is adequate in dissipating heat. Not as good as copper. Easy to clean and keep clean. Acid doesn't seem to bother it much at all. Cheap, much cheaper. Lots of different stainless alternatives. And when you're using stainless, you can put copper mesh. That's what a lot of us will put a copper mesh. Now, when I say when we put it in the line, that's 1.5 inch or 2 inch line, right? So this is a big, huge pipe we're talking about, not some 3/8 or 1/2 inch or 5/8 inch or 3/4, 1 inch copper pipe that we're forcing mesh into. No, we loosely roll this up and put it inside a big, huge spool. Loosely and allow that vapor through. So big difference. But when you add that copper mesh to it, like I was talking about the vapor path, that vapor is forced through all that copper mesh, and it has a large surface area. So one little 6-inch roll of copper mesh that's 2 inches around is equivalent to a worm, a shotgun condenser, a cape, and then some of copper, you know, in a copper setup. So as far as surface area is concerned, it's a lot greater surface area. So you're forcing, you know, all that vapor through it, and it'll remove the sulfites just the same as good. Even if you do have an all copper rig, putting that copper mesh in there is a good thing to do as well. If you have adequate diameter pipe, I wouldn't put anything less than 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch. 1 inch, I probably wouldn't do that, and anything less, absolutely not. But the stainless is a lot cheaper, easier to clean. Drawbacks: if you don't add the copper mesh, it's not going to remove sulfites. That's about it. So, you know, you just got to weigh the differences. But copper is superior, you know, because of its ease in making. If you want to make your own steel, it's going to be difficult to do unless you're a welder. So, you know, there's a lot of different people, different folks going to, you know, tend to gravitate towards either. But the biggest plus for stainless is it's very inexpensive. I saw that eastbound and down. Yeah, man. Thank you, thank you. Ordered cake steel from Phil and paid through Venmo on the website, but it never sent me email verification. And I went back to the website. It was still on the checkout page. Need to get up with Phil, or I'll take your information and check on it. Yeah, you should get a verification through your email if it went through, for sure. And through your bank, you know, you'll be able to go to your bank and look on the. No, that's Zelle, right? That's Zelle. I use Zelle. I'll take your info though. That's GACIA. GA. Cake steel. Yeah, try to send him an email and I'll send him a message too. But try to get up with him or Big Easy. It's his birthday, so he's gonna be kind of today's his birthday. And oh yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Happy birthday, Phil. but yeah, probably not gonna get back to you today. It's his birthday, and he had a lot going on yesterday. I think they went out and did some things. So, um, but talk to Big Easy, or just send him an email and stuff. If it hadn't checked out yet and it hadn't got taken it out of your bank or anything like that, chances are it's probably not processed yet. So, but he'll take care of you. He's a straight up guy, man. No worries about him. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, don't put that on here. Don't. But yeah, we'll after the show's over. Are you in the militia? Are you in the Moonshine Militia? If so, you'll see me on the admin page. So just shoot me a message or fill a message and shoot me a message on the militia page if you're on there. If you're not, you need to join. And we'll get you. We'll take care of it. We'll check it out. Make sure. What's going on, Patty? Good to see you, brother. All right. Got a question. I have a few quarts of whiskey tails that I plan to add to my rum distillation, as well as a gallon of dunder from the last rum run. Will the whiskey tails affect the taste negatively? Um, Negatively is it's hard to say. Anytime you're talking about taste, it's subjective because there's certain people that you know could literally drink cow piss, and just drink the worst liquor ever and say it's fine. So, taste is subjective. Um, if it tastes real corn, if you have a lot of corn flavor, that might not be the best thing to add with the rum, right? So, but the tails will keep. So, saving it for your next whiskey run would be fine as well. That's probably what I would do because, I definitely wouldn't want, the to cross, But you never know. It might make a very interesting flavor. But if it's two things that you think are going to kind of clash with each other and you just can't see the two, you know how they taste. So if you're thinking of mixing the two together and it's like, maybe just pour you a shot of the hearts of each and mix them together and kind of taste that and see what it's like, see if you like the corn and then the grunge from the rum and, that flavor together, Some people would like it, some people probably wouldn't, so it's hard for me to say, either way. It's certainly something you can do. Negative impact, though, would be subjective. I'll probably just save it for my next week's whiskey run. You can save them. You can save those tails and just kind of keep them together and keep the profiles because you don't really, a lot of people like to throw a lot of things in the pot, and when you get a lot of clashing mixed flavors, sometimes it just doesn't make it better, right? So, I mean, like mixed fruit might be okay, but you start mixing fruit with grains and, but like an apple rye, if they followed that line, there'd never been any apple rye or, peach rye. So, it's, but I would probably save it for a whiskey, Awesome, awesome. What did you make you a little 2 liter jug? Those work well because I've seen people put the little airlocks, the small ones, that come with the kits and stuff, and with the little S shape or just even the cup type, and they put those on a big 55-gallon drum, right? They got fermenting, and it's like That's too much, man. It blows the water out. It's just too much for it. Those are for like 5 gallon or, the carboys and stuff. They're not really for the big stuff. So anytime you get that big, you can get a little barbed fitting that'll fit on your lids, bulkhead fitting that'll fit on your drum lids, and just run or a garden hose or whatever, and run a hose over into a 2-liter jug, and that'll work just fine. Just anything to keep the bugs out. You don't. And two, it's not real critical on grain mashes or any mash that's going to be done in 3 or 5 days. You just want to keep the bugs out at this point, for those type fermentations. It's, you put a towel over it and just loosely fit the lid on there. Just allow it to burp, right? Or fart. People call it farting. Some people, it's burping. It's like, allow it to burp, and it'll be fine. But for like a brandy or a wine, something you're going to age a long time, or something that's going to be a slow distillation, cold temperature distillation that takes longer, airlocks work great. Just got your mash barrel, awesome. Yep, I just bought some off YouTube. I have it upstairs, but for your, let me think where I put those. They make a little plastic one, for your plastic barrels, and it's a bulkhead fitting. But there's a secret way to do it, and I'll tell you how. Especially for the ones that just have, you can't remove the lids, and it just have like a 2 little round, threaded lid holes on the top. Those type barrels. A lot of people use those barrels because they're real cheap. They're hard to work with. They're hard to clean. I definitely recommend the ones that have the screw-in tops, like the olive barrels and the pickle barrels, or the bands, right, that clasp and lock on it. And those type work real well because you can clean them, get into them, clean them out, and you can reach down in there and put these bulkhead fittings in. But if you have the other type barrel, drill your hole in the bottom where you want your drain or whatever going to go, and then drop you a line, like a little teeny rope or something, just string, and go through all the way through that top hole, right, and down into the barrel and through the hole you drilled. Just pull it through, and then tighten. But put the piece, the bulkhead fitting that's going to go through there, on there. That way it'll follow the line down, and it won't just fall off into the barrel. And you can pull it and make it go into that hole, and then thread that other piece on there and use that little string to help hold it in place, of course, while you get it threaded, and works pretty well. So that's a little secret to try to do that without, having to hold the barrel up until you can get the threads and try to reach in there with some hemostats or a finger and try to get it to come out. That little string trick works pretty well. But it's best to get the other barrels. They're a lot better to clean. But sometimes you don't have a choice. I got some of them 2-hole top barrels, and I end up cutting the top out of them and using them for a insulated barrel. Well, I was just showing somebody that yesterday, lots of barrels on Facebook Marketplace. Lots of good barrels. I like those olive barrels. But they're orange, right? You can see them a mile away if you're trying to do it out in the woods. So you're going to have to kind of paint them up a little bit. Earl's working on his garden, cleaning fence lines of trees. Yes, sir. And while you're on them fence lines, that's a good place to plant you some berries. Get you some blackberries and raspberries and blueberries and gooseberries. Talked to a fellow the other day. He was talking to me like, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned talking about planting fruit trees. Man, he's planting all kinds of apple trees and peach trees and all kinds of stuff. That's awesome to hear. Okay, Santa, why do we get our mash to a 1080 instead of going for a 1.120 corn mash? Now, one of the main things is to get to 1.120, you're going to have to use sugar, right? So that's part of the reason. Second part of the reason, once you get a little bit beyond, once you get around 1080 or past, it starts to get hot, right? So it's kind of it's sweet, and it'll make a hot liquor. Third thing is anything over that, different yeasts. Once you get to a certain percent of ABV in your mash, it starts stressing your yeast. It'll start killing other yeast at certain ABVs as well. A lot of our distiller yeast, a lot of data yeast, EC1118, probably one of the most, other than a turbo, which I don't even really talk about much. Did they even mention that during the yeast show? But like an EC1118, probably go up to 18%, right? And that's pretty hot. But most of them, like most of your bread yeast and typical Saccharomyces cerevisiae and 12, 14%. And bread yeast, about 12%, 14%. A lot of your champagne yeast will go a little bit higher, and some of your wine yeast will. But it starts stressing, and when they stress, they start creating off flavors, right? And they start creating organic compounds and acids and stuff that aren't pleasant. And so when it gets real hot like that, that's what begins to happen, is you start getting a lot of those bad flavors, off flavors, to go along with it being hot. And you're adding sugar to get that hot as well. When you're converting your grains, you're going to get a 1060 to 1080 if you the greatest and do a really good conversion and use a lot of grain to water ratio. If you get past 3, you might be able to get it up that high. But it gets so thick that it's really hard to work with and manage, right? So, 2, 2.5, 2.25, kind of a sweet spot for a lot of people. Back in the day, I used to have used 3 because I was using the powdered amylase. And there's some discrepancy on powdered amylase and amylase. Back in the day when I was using powdered amylase, people were like, oh, where does alpha amylase come from? Well, a lot of the powdered amylase back in those days was sourced from naturally from different vegetables, and I think sweet potatoes was one of the biggest sources of them. A lot of people use sweet potatoes to create the powdered amylase, but the high temp amylase comes from a bacteria, and that's something that's something that's been created a lot more recently than the old powdered amylase that we used to have to use. But when I use that powdered amylase, it really doesn't convert real well, and it's very temperature sensitive. At 150, 55 degrees, had to hold it at that temperature. And you'd have to use a little bit more corn because it really wasn't as effective as the high temp is. So now the high temps come along, we can get that same gravity using a little bit less corn because we're getting it out of that corn and we're getting it converted, whereas that powder used to not do so well. So can't remember what the bacteria strain is. It's a bacillus. Can't remember what the bacteria is. There's a bacteria that they use to synthesize and create this high temp amylase, and I think there might be a couple of different bacteria that they use. I know there's one in particular, and I can't remember the name of it. I just know some of this stuff. Anyway, but that's where that's synthesized from. Now the beta glucanase, they of course get that from the grains itself. You can get that from, wheat, any grain that has a lot of glucans, and that's a glucanase, and it's used to convert glucans, right? So anytime you're using any of those, you're dealing with like malted barley or malted wheat or any of those type grains. They have glucans and the enzymes in them they have also alpha, a natural alpha and a natural glucose, but the beta glucanase, is kind of unique to them. So I think that's where a lot of the beta glucanase is. And then the glucose, I think the glucose may come from a fungus, right? The glucoamylase, I think, comes from an aspergillus. fungus. But yeah, yeah, you just don't want to get it too hot. It's going to stress your yeast. It's going to get way too hot to drink, and you're going to have probably some pH crashing as well. So having those oyster shells in there is definitely going to help prevent that. But it's just too much. It overloads the yeast, and it's not going to increase your proof. You'll get maybe more yield, but it's just not going to be fit to drink, right? So trust me, if these commercial distilleries could get more product out of it, because it's all about money, right? It's about making money when it comes to business and quality. And if they could get more out of it by doing that, they would be, right? Every one of them would be running it up to 1.3 if they could. But also, once it gets to a certain point too, it becomes very syrupy. And that's not cheetah. Yeah, it's a cheesy cheetah. That's what it was, not a tiger. Yeah. I saw some of your experiments. They look interesting. I look forward to seeing your results, brother. Patches? Have you had to patch it up? It's What's going on, Wayne? Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. I'm a little behind, brother. I'm sorry. Shit, I'm already 20 minutes behind. Damn it. Notice there was little copper flakes in my new column. Just rinsing them. Flakes will be able to be rinsed out and steamed out and washed out. Yeah, standard cleaning should clean that. Rinsing, and you get your bottle brush, big bottle brush to go in some of those parts like your spools and stuff, and they make a bottle brush for just about every size, and those are very handy. And you can also put those on a string and run your string through and pull them all the way through if they don't have a long enough wire handle. A lot of them have a loop on one end of them, and I just drop a string through and just pull them through, and then, I guess you could tie the string going both directions and just pull them back and forth, right? But yeah, just good old scrubbing like that helps a lot. It can be a good thing, bad thing. I wouldn't say most because, well, in distilling it's okay. Winemaking, until recently, and it's kind of got a little niche in the wine industry now of some wine with lacto. Well, it's not very visually aesthetic, and you don't see a lot of wine snobs probably drinking it. But in the wine industry, it's a curse. It's hated. It's like that Brettanomyces that Woody was talking about. In distilling it may be okay, but in the wine industry with the flavors it gets off, it's a no bueno. It's a scourge. It's hated. So is lacto. It's not something that you want at all. But in distillation, a lot of those things are removed, and we can benefit from a lot of those flavors. So I think in the wine industry, I've read a little bit on it. So there's a little niche in that, but for the most part, in the distilling industry, it's fine. It has a good creamy softness that a lot of people like. Lactic acid is another of these organic acids I talk about that's created during fermentation. And it's in a lot of them, if not most all of them, but it won't necessarily take over. But if it does, there's different schools of thought on this. Some people like it early, and they'll let it come in and do its thing and then let it die off and then add their yeast. I'm not so keen on that because the lacto and the yeast compete for the same thing, and lacto can also consume a little alcohol. So I think for me, I would want it towards the end of fermentation. I would want my fermentation to go smoothly, and then at the very end, finish up the last bit of sweetness with some lacto and introduce it late. That way it's not competing with my yeast and not coexisting and competing, because, Yeast really don't like that, and you won't have that much stress to deal with, and the collagen is created with the stress, and you'll still get that creamy softness, and it'll help finish it out, right? So some people introduce it late. If you can save the culture, you can skim it and refrigerate it and save it. To create it, you can just get a good quality Greek yogurt and use that to introduce it to fermentation. A lot of people do that. It's one of the acceptable ways, and it's. But if you do, make sure that you clean everything up really well. That way, you can control the lacto. That's the biggest thing about lacto is you want to be able to control it. You don't want it coming when it wants to. You want it to be able to add it when you want it, right? So cleaning becomes an issue as well. And I think that's another reason the wine industry doesn't like it so much is because, and commercial industries don't like it so much is because for us, cleaning is not a big deal. We take it over the sink and rinse it if you got to ever. If you're outside, the garden hose or pressure washer, boom, done, no big deal. But in big commercial industries, it's, 5,000-10,000 gallon tanks that you got to climb through a manhole to get into or take a ladder up the side and drop down in through a ladder. And, it's like a small room that you're having to scrub the walls with, it's quite different in the commercial environment. So they tend to not like to have it because it's harder to control once you get it infecting everything, right? What's going on, Justin? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you sometime about that business thing you were looking at. Definitely want to talk to you about that sometime. Give me a shout sometime this week. Well, anytime you want it, you're just a cup of Greek yogurt away from getting it. You can add that Greek yogurt and yeah, you don't want to create any issues and poison yourself. Yeah, I don't even know if I'd put it in 1 inch to be honest, but yeah, never put it in small line. Don't put ever, when we talk about putting it in lines, I'll reiterate this 1,000 times just to make it sure that it's clear. Never put it in something small because you're going to create back pressure and you're going to also create a hazard of getting it plugged up. You might puke into it and puke some, particles and get caught in there, and the next thing you know, you're getting a lot of back pressure, and that's not something that you want a lot of. A little bit, it's not going to hurt a little thing. When we talk about back pressure, typical stills without a thumper, about 3 or 4 psi. There's no really back pressure. With a thumper, you might get 4 or 5 psi. That's nothing significant. If you run a column and or a thumper, you're increasing a little bit of your backflow because you're creating, other, water and distillates coming back down, and you see a lot of that dancing action and stuff. So there's a little bit, but the biggest problem with back pressure is its difficulty in controlling temperatures, right? So you increase the pressure, you're increasing the temperature, and it's harder for you to control the temperature when you're dealing with pressure and temperature. That's why it's always good to size things adequately coming off your still for that. A lot of people are freaking out thinking, oh my God, because we talked about having, a 1/2 inch line or a 5/8 inch line coming off a 10 or 20 gallon still. No, it doesn't make it explosive. It's not going to blow up on you unless it gets plugged, of course. But even if a 1.5 or 2 inch line gets plugged, it can blow, right? But it's just creating a little back pressure, and it's harder for you to control your temperature is the problem. It's not necessarily the risk of exploding or anything like that. So don't freak out because you got a 20 gallon still with a 5/8 or a 3/4 inch line, and that might not be enough. It might be creating back pressure slightly, but it's mostly the pressure increases the temperature in the pot, and it makes it more difficult to regulate. That's the problem. And two, if it can get clogged with a grape or something like that, especially the 1/2 inch and some of the vevers. Like if you got a 13 or a 15 gallon 3-pot bever and you got 3/8 inch copper coming off there, replace that, please. That's a lot of back pressure, and it's going to be hard to control your temperatures. And when you got everything coming off it, when you run that temperature up like that, you got everything coming off at the same time. You got a lot of smearing, and it's going to affect your quality of your shine, right? And it's going to make it really difficult to do cuts. So that's one of the biggest issues. So increase the size of that line, decrease the pressure, and it'll help you control the temperature. Absolutely. Yeah, look, rashid greens. Yeah, absolutely, Cave Daddy. Yeah, they do. They work just fine. And probably last a lot longer than the mesh, right? The mesh, I just, after I get done with the run, I'll stick it in a jar of water and shake it up and rinse that out real good. And then I'll just leave it in the water for, a few hours. And then I'll take it out and kind of run it under the garden hose and spray it out real good, and then I'll just lay it out and let it dry, and you can get quite a few runs out of one. But once it starts getting the green stuff on there, you can put citric acid in a jar and kind of remove that green stuff for a time or few. But once you start doing that, you'll notice that your copper start to grade. And once it does, it's once it starts getting green real easily and it's hard to get the green off, just recycle it and start with a new little row. It's not real expensive, especially when you compare it to buying the steel. But those rashid greens, those will last a long time. You just clean them up, scrub them up, and they're good to go. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure about the Venmo. I don't do the Venmo. I use Zelle, and my bank. Well, that's because my bank does Zelle, and I do PayPal and stuff. So, yeah, I get a notification. So, but after the show, Trey, we'll get we'll get it straightened up, brother. I'm glad you made it, brother. Good to see you on here. Awesome. Yeah, I just follow up with an email, make sure they got it and everything, nothing got crossed. But yeah, if it took it out, that means they got it. They'll take care of you. But it is his birthday, so don't expect anything today, unless Ian does it, or Big Easy, I should say. Oh, you gonna win that keg, huh? I see. Yep, yep. You slack a lacking. Good to see you, Scott. It's like a sweet feed. Yeah, I guess there is molasses in some of that corn, so yeah, I guess it would be sweet feedy. Didn't think about it that way, and it just tells me how far behind I am. 20 minutes. On your nephew's YouTube. All right. Yeah, it should give you a transaction ID number or something like that that should identify the transaction. So just follow up with a message to them with that transaction. They'll get it. 2-piece lid. That's good. I've got both kinds. Actually, I've got all three. I've got some screw lids, I've got some band lids, and then I've got some with just the two little holes on the top. They're the worst. The band lids are pretty cool. They're good and they're waterproof, and I don't know. Between them and the screw-on type, both of them are pretty cool. But I like the band lids and the screw-on lids. Maybe the screw-on's a little better, but the band seal probably the best at all. If you got a rubber gasket in the top of the screw-on ones, they probably seal okay, and water, won't get in them because it washes down the side and it's not going to go up and in, right? So it's good outside. A lot of people use their barrels and stuff for grain storage. It's great for grain storage if you can keep it inside, like a utility building or something like that. When you get your grains in the fall, I had somebody ask me, yesterday about getting some winter wheat. Most of your wheat and rye gets planted either late fall and harvested in like May through June, depending on where you're located, maybe up to July. And then some of the wheat will get planted in the spring and get harvested, a little bit later in the fall, like October. And I think rye pretty much gets planted in the fall as well and harvested the next summer. So the best time to get your fresh wheat from your farmers is going to be anywhere from June through September-ish, in that range. A lot of times after that point, what they have on hand is what they plan on planting the next year, right? So they'll sell, what they can, and then they'll keep some to the side to plant for the next year. And, just because they grow it this year doesn't mean they're going to grow it next year, because a lot of times it's just a cover crop. They use it to help maintain certain nutrients in the soil and balance soil. So they rotate a lot. So they'll do different things every year. So, yeah, you can get it quite cheap, from these farmers if you can catch them. But that's the best time to do it. June, July, August, probably the peak times. But make sure it's good and dry. Make sure that if you put it in those barrels, I like to get it in the fall and late summer and fall. And I'll put it in those barrels, and it'll be outside, or in a storage building that doesn't have heat. And when it freezes outside, especially, down south, you might not get this as much, but up here, when it freezes, it'll kill off all the larvae, right? So all the bugs that are alive, all the larvae that they have, in and around the grains, it'll kill every bit of that off. So you don't have to worry about dealing with a lot of bug infestations after that point. And if you keep them, strapped shut, they'll remain pretty good and bug free. But anybody's dealt with them, with the bugs, they can get bad. Yeah, there ain't a more reliable seller in the group, and all of us. He's definitely be the last person I can think of that would shaft anybody. So, yeah, Philby's a great guy. He'll take care of you, brother. No worries. What's going on, Mash Brothers? Good to see you. What's going on, CB? Yeah, Philby will take care of you, man. He's good people. I heard some spirits like rum that can come off hot. They let age for a few years on a shelf. Oh, yeah. Most everything that comes off, especially, well, when you're looking at rum, that's basically a sugar wash, right? So, you're just using agave syrup, so it's a lot like a sugar wash. So, yeah, you're going to have to, aging it, especially in barrels, and tequila for that matter, agave, it's very similar. And so molasses with your rum, I'm confused. Molasses with your rum is, it's a syrup, it's a sugar, and your agave, with your tequila. Both of them are basically like a sugar wash, right? They're high sugar, and that's why there's special yeast for them as well, and that can handle that because it's really tough to do like a sugar wash with a wine yeast or something like that. I mean, you can, but they're not geared for just, you can train them to, I guess, like what he was talking about. You can acclimate them to do it, but just straight out of the pouch, it's not going to like that high sugar, you know, and step feeding. That's something I didn't get into, and I wish there would somebody. I wish I'd been able to watch it live. I would ask them about step feeding the yeast instead of having all that nutrients and everything right up front, boom, and having everything going hard and they're finding that's not the best way because that causes stress and causes burnout as well, and so step feeding, kind of helps, and I think also people are adding some of the sweetness. So when you do a tequila or a rum wash, may start with a lower gravity and just add a little bit at a time and experiment with that and see how that works, because that may create a little less stress. And so that would be something good to experiment with as well, and like step feeding it. So instead of the nutrients just being fed, the sugar's being slowly fed to it. So, and I think that might be a benefit for the yellow label angel yeast, where it only gets to consume what is converted as it's converted. So everything's not converted right off the bat with that yellow label angel yeast. It's a slow, longer fermentation. So I think it may release it more slowly, and it may be more of a regulated, and you probably get a more balanced line where you won't get the crash, so that'd be something interesting to do some research on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, brother. What's going on, Anthony? Good to see you, brother. Santa Barbara, California. Man, I know Northern California got a lot of snow. I got a buddy up there, man. He's been shoveling his ass off. Well, it's Eric A is, our admin in DIY Shine Steel Building. And he's been digging out of snow for a long time. He got a few feet. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's calcium carbonate. That's all. They're all about all calcium carbonate. Um, but it's just expensive. If you clean those oyster shells up and boil them and clean them and use them, yeah, it works fine. Both work just as well. They're the same thing and they serve the same purpose. I'm just an old cheap ass hillbilly. I try to, if there's a way to do something cheaper and as effective, I'm all over it. And I was talking to somebody yesterday or day before about that. They were talking about airing out their jars, and they just use paper towels and in the rings. So cut your paper towels out, or get the kind that you can tear into fourths, quarters. They tearing quarters and halves now, and halves and quarters now, and just put that in the ring and put it on there. And he's using paper towels. And I'm like, man, you don't know how happy it makes me to hear you say that, because a lot of people using those coffee filters, and them coffee filters ain't cheap, man. And they're just using the coffee filter and throwing it away. Man, I'm too tight for that kind of shit. I use a paper towel or a napkin as well. That's just the old school. I got parents and grandparents that lived through the Depression, and you didn't waste in my house. There was you weren't going to be wasteful. That was. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, brother. Yeah, the shield's just cheap and easy way. I mean, but the stabilizer's fine. I'm pretty sure if you look on the label, if they tell you what it is, it's calcium carbonate. Now they may put something in there for to raise pH, where you can kind of use it in a dyer. They may put a little pickling lime in there, but What's going on, Morgan? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I saw that too. It looks like a pretty good deal. For the property and the size of the warehouse. Around here that'd be a pretty good deal. Not sure the population of that town. I know it's fairly close to Cedar Rapids, but um, if they allow you to open up, check your state regulations. I know locally they might not care about things, but state, and I'm sure you probably have already. But yeah, check your state regulations out and see what they'll allow, and locally what they'll allow. One of the biggest benefits is if some states won't allow it, but if you're in a state that allows it, being able to have a pub or a bar there, and not just a tasting room, but a bar where you can have people come up and buy the product that you're making there on site. Big, huge difference, man. They're a lot more successful. Let's just put it that way than the ones that can't do that. So it's definitely a game changer. If you can, it will definitely. A lot of people will try to locate the states that allow that, because you probably won't see as many auctions with people going out of business because of that, right? What's going on, David? How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Awesome. Well, we're here, brother. Hell yeah. So anybody got your questions, man, answer it. I know I'm a little bit behind here. I'm gonna try to get caught up. It's at 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna send down my links here, and I'm gonna scroll down through here and try to get caught up. By far a beginner. Flake corn and malted barley, 15 gallons. Well, 15 gallons means you're going to need probably 30 pounds or 35 pounds of grain. What percentage you use, you're going to need to use, depending on the barley, whether it's 6 row or 2 row, maybe 20% needs to be barley if you're going to not use any of your exogenous enzymes. I highly recommend getting exogenous enzymes. With your flake corn, you're not going to have to gelatinize it, because it's already gelatinized when flake corn is made. It's run through a steamroller, and that steamroller is so hot and it rolls it flat, and it gets into that grain so well that it gelatinizes it almost instantly as it's rolled. So you don't have to gelatinize it, but you're still going to have to bring it up to temp for your malted barley in 145 degrees or so. Let me pull up your chart here. You want to screenshot this chart, or join the militia page, or join the DIY Shine and Steel Building page, and you can get these charts out of our file section, and they're handy, and you can save it to your phone. And I highly recommend you doing that, because it's a lot of these charts. So a lot of these you can save to your phone, and it'll help you. I forgot to nobody told me about putting the words up. See, y'all, Clint, you forgot to tell me, brother. It's all Clint's fault. I forgot that. But this chart right here will tell you, in between the dumbbells, that's the temperature that you want to add it and hold it for a while, right? 30 minutes or so to 90 minutes. To get the full effect. You can see the barley malt there between 147 and 155. That's about the temperatures that you want to add it and hold it. So this, wheat got a pretty large range, but that's not a malted wheat. That's just regular wheat, and that's just regular rye. So if it's malted, you definitely want to add it towards the higher end of those temperatures to help activate and hold that, keep that amylase more active. It's very active up to that dot to the right, but once you get past that, it starts to denature, right? So you don't want to go past that with any of them. So, and that 155, that coincides with like I was talking before, with the natural alpha amylase that they were getting out of um, sweet potatoes. So you can see on here down there it says potato, you don't want to go above 160. Sweet potatoes a little bit less than that because of the alpha amylase that's in, and I think a lot of it's in the skin, the actual skin of the potato. So you know 155 for that, and but in your barley, just add it at that temperature and hold it, and then. But I definitely recommend using those high temp liquid amylase and the liquid glucoamylase. And if you plan on using high amounts of wheat or rye or the glutinous type grains, make sure they're either malted. If they're not malted, make sure that you have some beta glucanase. It helps. I know Clint talks about this Sebamil and some of these different amylases that they have, and they have like a combination, and it's really good because they mix several of these together, so you're getting the benefit of each of them right in one product, and you're not having to add them individually and buy them individually. I think it combines a lot of them. We did a little bit of research on them, and a lot of them have a combination of those, so that's very handy as well. But yeah, bring your questions here. We can talk you through it for sure. I'm not sure if lacto can eat triglycosaccharides or not. And I guess Clint did say that at 8:35 about the comment. So, okay. All right, I was staying corrected. He was on the ball. I dropped it. I just saw that, Clint. That's funny. Damn it. Damn it, man. I hate it when I forget shit. But yeah, so basically you're just going to start with your corn. You're going to heat your corn up to about 155. You're going to add your malted barley at about 155 and let it start cooling down to about 145-50. Maintain that 145-50 range for about 30 minutes to an hour or so, and then just let it naturally cool down. Beer makers will probably tell you to put that chiller in there and cool it down fast and deal with proteins and all that. But and I think Amanda touched some on that. If you can, that's good. But I don't think we really need to worry about the protein hazes as much and all that stuff. So, but yeah, you can do certain protein rests as you go down, but it's a lot easier with the flake corn because you don't have to gelatinize. So that's one of the benefits of using flake corn. One of the downsides is it's not cheap. It's not $7 for 50 pounds. But if you want to use that flake and you can afford it, it takes a lot of the work out because you don't have to actually cook your corn. You can just heat it up to the 150, 55, and you're ready to go. You're ready to, add the amylase and add your, malted grains, and just let it cool from there. So it takes 90 minutes of cooking, steeping, and the risk of scorching out. So it's definitely good to use, and it's good flavor. A lot of people like the flavor of it. But I'm not sure. Let me do a little research on that real quick. I've never really looked to see. Oligo. Yeah, lactobacillus species readily consume and ferment various oligosaccharides, such as fructose oligosaccharides, galactose, which is fructose and galactose. So yeah, it will help finish those out. Sure will. It will eat those oligosaccharides that the yeast can't eat, for sure. That's cool. Never really thought about that, but that's another benefit of adding it at the end, right? So it's gonna finish those up. That's good to know. Good question, man. I'm glad you brought that up. That's definitely another benefit. 2 to 10 monosaccharide residue chains, right? So it will do your limit dextrins, 2 to 10. Oligos, there's a lot of people say 3 to 12, 2 to 10. I don't know. I've always heard 3 to 12. It's trisaccharides to 12. I don't know what 12 would be. I don't know what the prefix is for 12. Trisaccharides. So, but I think it's 3 to 12. But there is you'll see varying information when you talk about oligosaccharides. Some will say 2 to 10. Most I've seen say 3 to 12, but anything beyond that is considered a polysaccharide, just meaning many. But yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you asked that. So yeah, it'll help some of those limit dextrins. Very interesting. And it might be something to do when you get one that won't finish out and you get that stuck fermentation and it's just sitting there and it won't finish. Put some of that Greek yogurt in there and check your pHs and temperatures and other things. But yeah, introduce some of that Greek yogurt in there and see or lacto, if you've got some saved. Awesome question, Scott. I like it. Be a good experiment. All right, let's move on. Well, I'm not dogging sugar. I mean, I've done sugar shines many times, and I'll probably still continue to do them. It's a good way to make some quick, cheap alcohol, but it's not good. I said quick and cheap. I didn't say good and cheap, or good and quick. I just said cheap, quick. But yeah, it's probably not. It's not cheaper than corn, so. But it is awful easy. And sometimes you just, by God, want to get something. You don't want to go get some corn. You don't want to grind. You just want some damn shine, right? So that's, all of us probably get that way from time to time. I think it's time for a little sip. Speaking of which. Hello, Miss Lisa. Good to see you. How's your week going? That honey shine is getting better over time, that's for sure. I can taste the difference. I've been drinking and sipping on it for a while now. It's definitely improving. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. Just by weight, make sure that 3/4 is corn, 75% or 3/4 is corn, 25%. 20 if it's a 6-row with a high diastatic, or if you got malted wheat. 25, maybe 30 if it's a 2-row, or if it's not completely malted and you got some that's malted, some that's not, then you might want to increase your percentages. But if we use those liquid high temp like we talk about, and the glucoamylase that we talk about a lot on here, it especially for beginners, it's a game changer for beginners. For more advanced, once you get used to it, once you get into the groove and learn more about steeping and have equipment, that will help you hold those temperatures, and you're more used to it, and now you got your pH paper out and you're doing things a little bit more scientifically now that you've gotten in the groove and you figured out this, all the steps. Now you can start trying to hone your skills. Then you'll start, maybe just doing, all conversions like that. But it's a little bit more difficult, but I'm definitely not going to discourage anybody from trying, for sure, because it's definitely going to give you good flavors, and you can use like I get people call me and talk to me all the time about stuff, and you can still use your malted grains for flavor. You just don't rely on them as much for the conversion, right? You don't care if they work or not. And you can reduce the amount of the liquid high temp that you use and the liquid glucose you use if you're supplementing it with some malted grains. So you kind of use them both together. You can use less and they kind of get the best of both worlds, right? Save some on your liquids and get that good malted flavor. But as far as malting corn and cooking 10 to 12 hours, those days are never going to happen for me again, ever, ever, ever again. Because that was the biggest benefit of buying flake corn back in the day was you didn't have to cook it and gelatinize it forever, if you was malted. So, yeah. So you can use malted corn and I'm not saying don't use malted corn. I'm just saying we don't have to worry about cooking it. We don't have to worry about denaturing the enzymes in it because we can get our enzymes other places. So we can get the benefit of that flavor from malted corn and not have to worry about denaturing those alpha enzymes in it because we got that liquid high temp. So we can gelatinize it at a higher temperature, kill off all the natural enzymes. Not a big deal. We're going to use some, liquid high temp to do that. We're still going to get a decent malt flavor. Kind of the best of both worlds. How much of a difference does a half-inch make when you have to step up from 1/8 inch to a half-inch? Now, if you're talking about off of steel, I wouldn't run an 1/8 inch ever unless you're talking about a coffee pot size steel. Just take it off there. Don't even do it. Don't even think about it. Now, if you're talking about, I've seen 1/8 inch lines running into condensers or something like that, 1/4 inch, 1/8, eighth though, that's small. 1/4 inch, but definitely anything that's an 1/8 of an inch, rip it off there. Don't even, unless it's just one of those little teeny decorative ones you see people make. The little, I can see them using 1/8 inch for that, but absolutely not, brother. I wouldn't. I wouldn't even use half. Anything over 5 gallons, I wouldn't even use half on. And it's not because of the clogging. Now with the 1/8, it is because I wouldn't deal with that ever. It's a lot of back pressure, and it's a very easily clog hazard. It's so small. So a corn kernel's going to clog that up, right? Or anything, easy to clog that. So for 1/2 inch, 5 gallon still, okay, because you're really going to be tough to make cuts on a 5 gallon anyway. But when you start getting 10, 15, 20 gallons, I wouldn't use anything less than 3/4, right? 5/8 to 3/4. I wouldn't use half on anything like that. And the bigger the better. If you can get inch or inch and a half or 2, more the better. That's one of the benefits of the football steel is it's got that ferrule coming off there. It's 2.5. Most people step it down to 2 and use the 2-inch spools, and that's a really good size for that 18.5 and running 15. Same thing with a keg. You're running into 2-inch. You got your 2-inch piping coming off a keg. That's why kegs do so well and why kegs produce a good flavor, is because it's easier to make those cuts because you got it coming off that 2-inch line and it's not creating a lot of pressure in the steel and you can regulate your temperatures a lot easier. So, yeah. Obviously, the next step is to butt a forge, melt your copper mash down, and recast it. Yeah, new mash. Yeah, I can see that happening. Man, I'd love. I used to watch this show called How It's Made. I guess it's probably still on Discovery. I haven't watched Discovery in a long time. I don't get it anymore. But used to love watching How It's Made, and I was fascinated in the industries and how everything's made, and loved that show. But I can't imagine mesh, stretching it out and making these thin wires and trying to That's funny, man. You don't micromanage to that point, bro. You'll just kill yourself, man. You get lost in your own mind when you start thinking that. Yeah, I wouldn't. 5 gallon or so is fine with a half. Anything over, I would definitely want a 5/8 or 3/4 at least. And if you can go 1 inch or 1.5, or put your little one of these ferrules on there and start going into the spools, easy, better. And if you're dealing with copper to stainless, you can solder them, braze those on. You don't have to be a welder. But I highly recommend it. And that's why keg stills and these Vevers make such good liquor, is because you don't have all that pressure and you can make cuts. And with these bigger stills, they got these big, 6, 8 inch where your cap sits on there, and they got big caps and they got big lint arms that taper down to give you the vapor velocity where you need it, where you want the pressure pushing into that worm. Um, that's why they produce better, and it's easier to make cuts on them, is because the pressure's here and not, it's not back pressure. Now, when you introduce the thumper, then you're dealing with something else entirely. But yeah. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you. See, Clint? Sheen's on the ball. We'll have to put him on the payroll. I appreciate you remembering that, brother, because my mind, I get thinking about all these things and conceptualizing, and I know you do a lot of that too. O'Sheen's got a creative mind. He thinks outside the box a lot like I do. I like it. Some of the things he thinks of may sound a little crazy, but crazy is the mother of inventions, right? It's the creativity. It's just spelled different. But I did think about your bike set in the wood, and one thing I think of is if you do that, it might hinder some of your alcohol from being able to get into the pores and get some of the character of the wood out. So I don't know. Might be just to drip some of that in there and flavor it with that as you age it. But do remember that the backset's not only highly acidic, it's also very tart. It's had all the sugar removed, a lot of the water removed, a lot of the alcohol removed. So it's concentrated flavor, but it's also very tart and might not be the best flavor anymore, right? So you remove a lot of the sugars from everything, and then you remove the alcohol in the water, and it concentrates those flavors. But if you've ever drank a little back set, you'll know what I'm talking about, because it'll sit on your palate for a while. It's definitely gonna be in your on your tongue for quite a while, man. It's not something you shake easily. All right, got them links here. Thank you, brother. Let's see, 9:24, and I'm at 8:50. Shit, 30 minutes back. Damn it. Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about when you get the black barrels and the dark barrels is, do not, and I repeat, do not let them get out in the sun. You have to keep them in the shaded area. So white barrels, if you're going to be outside, you definitely want to go with a white or a lighter colored barrel that'll reflect heat. But them dark barrels, man, on a hot day, just go over and pick one up, man. That son bitch will be hotter than far. And I mean, you pick that thing up, it'll burn your hands. So If you're leaving it outside and you're fermenting outside and it's in the sun and you're in a warm climate, you're gonna run into some major problems. You definitely want to keep it in a cooler place that's very shaded, very well. And I mean, even the sun hitting the bottom of it will stress some yeast out and give you some really bad flavors. And people be like, I don't know, man. I had the same mash and they were sitting right next to each other, and one of them's horrible and the other one's good. I don't know. I didn't do a damn thing. Explain that. And a lot of times it's the sun was hitting one and it wasn't hitting the other, and that heat got in there and affected the yeast and stressed them, and caused it. And they swear up and down that they's the same. There's some little genie in the bottle came out and waved a wand and made it bad. And it's probably something simple like that you just don't really think about, right? It's like when I was using oak, I bought some oak from firewood company, right? And they brought me a bunch of white oak, and I was like, hell yeah, I need more of this, and I was using this to char, and I'd see a little bit of the little rainbow at the top of my distillate, and I'm like, what the hell? And it tasted bad, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Where am I getting this from? And it was the bar and chain lube from each side of the damn firewood. So I had to cut it with a regular circular saw, and to cut the oily ends off, right? And it was that bar and chain lube that was causing that. So always little things like that you just don't think about, and all of a sudden it hits you, and it's like, I'll be damned, But yeah, those as long as you keep them out of the sun, and you did mention that. In the winter, yeah, it might be a good idea in the winter time, yeah, for sure. If you can regulate it, but hell, it might get too hot in the winter, man. I'm telling you, some bitches get hot. They're like little heat magnets, man. It's like getting in the car, when you got that black vinyl seats or black leather seats, man. You get in them on a sunny day and burn your ass. Making something with grape, it's a grappa and a certain setup. It may be something kind of like one of mine. Awesome, brother. Hell yeah. Yeah, I've got a bunch of blackberries up in eastern Kentucky. I have to drive up and pick them, but they're on a roadway. There's the chain mesh, I guess 4-inch mesh fence, and we drive up. It's old road, man. You'd have to have 4-wheel drive. We take 4-wheelers up it, and you can pick them off 4-wheelers. You drive right up, pick them on one side, coming down, pick them on the same. But it's a big drive. It's a long drive. I think I need another drink. So got a little bug in my throat. Need to kill. Take care of it. But yeah, it's awesome, man. And the Home Distillers Group, never seen a setup. Probably might be something similar to what I used to do. I've got a pretty crazy looking setup with valves and shit everywhere. And I did say I was going to pull that off my phone. I'll try to do that. I can't right now. It's just too much shit to do. Yeah, I'll try to do that one of these days and put it up there. I've got years ago I set up this and that's what I use now. But it's a pretty, I don't know, you might be able to see it on my phone if I just hold it like that. Let me see. Let's go into my gallery. I don't usually take as many pictures of it nowadays. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, there's that watermelon mash. Let's see here. There's one of my setups. Yeah, getting this was when I was infusing. I don't know if y'all can see that coming off a Vever pot, but that's just going through my wishbone infuser. That's one setup I do, and you can see that that red underneath there. That burner, it stays lit the whole damn time, man. It's a jewel. But that was when I infused. I set it up that way. That's why I like these tri-clamp settings. You can set them up so many different ways to do different functions. This other way is pretty much the way I'm going to run it standardly, and strip. I can strip on one side and open up some valves and infuse on the other. And that setup wasn't set up that way. That was just strictly for infusion, using my wishbone infuser, which I'm improving on. So that's a work in process. Here we go. Here's another little setup I do off that Vever. And you can do the same thing off a keg or off a big steel. But if you see that first drop down in between that wishbone, I strip to that, or I can open up a valve and go into the wishbone infuser. But I did one even better than that. So it looks kind of like a little oil refinery or something. It can get a little complicated, so you don't want to get drunk while you're running it. But I'm trying to find the one that was the optimal. It's going to be probably the way I run it each time. And it looks similar. I'll find them all, put them out there someday for everybody to see. But but they're pretty. But it gets a little complex. But basically, what you're doing is you're coming up out of the steel and you're going into a T, and you got a valve on each side of the T, right? Butterfly valve. And I open up, and then on one side it goes into a small spool, an elbow, and into a shotgun condenser, and I can strip right off that, just straight up and out, no reflux, just straight strip. There is a deflegmator in line there below that T that if I want to introduce water to it, I can introduce water and start getting a little bit more reflux other than just the little bit of reflux from just passive reflux, right? So I can strip on one side, and then I can close that valve, open the other side, and have it going into an infusion system, right? Or a jar rig or whatever you want on that side of it. So that kind of similar to my bypass, but instead of bypassing, it's just running it to one condenser instead of the other. Right? So you're not bypassing it, you're just diverting. It's a diverter now instead of a bypass. So you're diverting it just to this condenser straight out, so I can run it through one condenser till I get done with my 4 shots and heads, and then close that valve and open it up and send just hearts in the other direction, right? So, you know, you could set up a pretty good little microbrewery that way as well, and that's definitely what you want to do if you have setting up a small commercial craft still. I highly recommend doing it that way if you're not going to go with a hybrid setup or something, a little more complex. Very simple, easy to run, easy to do, and it can scale up to any size that you want. Very simple, very simple. What's going on, Elvin? Does malted wheat have similar diastatic power to malted barley? Now, malted barley 2-row is going to have the least, and then your 6-row, and then wheat. If they're all malted properly at a malt house, or if they're all malted to their potential, wheat will have the most. And I think I've got a chart here. Let me see if I've got my chart. And let me increase the size of these. Make those extra large icons so these old eyes can see. Here we go. So here's your diastatic power of red wheat malt, white wheat malt, 2-row. It doesn't talk about a 6-row, but a 6-row is going to be a little bit higher, probably close to 160, like a white wheat, and then on down. And you'll see your caramel and your chocolate malt. And well, let me move these out of the way so you can see it. Those don't have any because they're denatured, right? But yeah, your wheat malts are definitely going to be higher. A 6-row is going to be above your 2-row here. It's going to be close to the 160. But yeah, a red winter wheat, hard red winter wheat, 180 is going to be your highest. And I'm pretty sure this chart is also in the militia and on the DIY Shine and Stuff page in the files. But if not, you can take your phone there, and if you got a big enough screen, and maybe take a picture of it and use it. If not, you can download it. I think it's in a JPEG form, or actually I'll be able to tell you right now what format that is. That is in let me go to properties here, and that is a it's got to be some difficult these days. That's a PNG file, so that's an Adobe-based file. But most viewers and everything will see a PNG. But that's your basic diastatic power of your malts. Now that's if they're malted to potential. So if you're doing it yourself at home, give yourself a little room, and don't beat yourself up if you don't get these numbers, because these are professional malt houses getting these numbers, and with specialized equipment. So if you do it at home, it's going to be a little less. And corn, that's something we talked a little bit about on Friday, and want to reiterate as well. Corn is one of those that, and most grains have enough to do their own, but they don't others. That's why a lot of these malted grains have the beta glucanases, because you get a lot of glucans from those same grains. Whereas corn, it barely has enough. If you do it, if you malt it perfectly, it's barely enough to convert itself. And if it's not malted perfectly, it probably won't. So even if it's perfect, it's still right on the edge, barely enough. So a lot of people say it's still not enough, because any error, it's going to be in the 90s, high 80s or 90% of what it can do. So it's always good to have that liquid high temp, or the powder. If you got malted corn and you want to go through that cooking process, bless your heart. You're more patient than I am. I'll never do it again. I can tell you that right now. It's just not efficient, especially if you're using propane. That's a lot of propane to cook 10, 12, 14 hours to gelatinize malted corn at 140, 45 degrees for that long. Shit, no. Vodka set up, so I'm not sure which group it is. I'm not sure if I'm even in it. But there's, if it's just running on a column, a common column, something like this, that's what you see a lot in the hobbyist is columns like this, running on them, or maybe a column like the one I just got, like this, sitting on top of, let me take the comments away, this like this sitting on top of your keg or your bever or your pot, whatever, copper pot, whatever you got, 4-inch. So that's basically what most of us hobbyists use. You know, it can get complex like some of my setups there that I just showed. So, but yeah, most of them are just basic reflux for your vodka. And then you got your, what was that little setup? Trying to think where it dripped from the, here's my mind. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was it's got a strange name to it. Maybe if I pull up a picture, I can remind myself, get a little retrieval cue here. I think I got a picture of one of them somewhere. Somebody can refresh my memory. I can't, maybe I don't. I thought I had a picture of that. Boca Bob, that's it, Boca Bob, but I still don't see my picture. I finally came to me, man. I'm getting slow. One of these days it won't hit me at all anymore. It'll just fade away, I guess. But yeah, Boca Bob. Or Boca Cob or some shit like that. But those produce real high proof. I don't have that. Let me Google that pic and add it to my list because I want to show that to people. Let's see. I know I had that. I've got the plans in the DIY Shine and Steel building. But let me see if any of these have a picture of it. I know I have that. It's on my old PC. It's not on this one, but yeah, it's a specialized system. Let me take a screenshot of this one. It doesn't show a real good picture, but it'll give you an idea. It's basically got an internal, in the column, it's got an internal coiled deflagmator, and off that coil, it's got like a little cone that catches the distillate as it drops off that, and it eliminates the water from running down the side. I guess the surface tension keeps the liquor running down the side and the drip. And I've seen some third world setups that have something very similar, and it's very interesting how they figured that out. And but that they use bamboo and a little, piece of bamboo where the top's cut out of it and it's hollowed out, and it's stuck in the middle of that steel where it has a little conical inside the cap. It's like a cone inside there, inside a cap that they put on it, so it just steams up on that and drips into this. It's extremely interesting how they do it, and it kicks out some high proof as well. So let me put this screenshot up here and show you where it should be there. Daggone it. Oh, here it is. So you can see it's got it on a keg. So, but it's a little more complex. I've got plans in like I said, in the DIY Shine and Steel building. I've got a pretty detailed set of plans that show you how to weld it up and make it in there. And it's in the top. You can see where it's got water in and out, and it just goes into a coil, a small copper coil inside there. And you can see on the right there. About 12 inches down, you can see where this little pipe comes out, and that's got just a little cup in there that catches a drip, and it's very slow. It's a very, very slow producer, but it'll kick out about 194, 196 proof liquor. Man, it's about as pure as you can get. Man, it'll kick out some really high proof if that's what you're looking for. Well, I'll have to. If you want to message me on the DIY Shine and Steel building page, go to Facebook and join the DIY Shine and Steel building page, and just share it. Share that link to it, and we don't care. if it comes from another page. I mean, I'm not worried about people. Oh, I'm going to leave this page, go to that page. I don't care about all that shit. You know, I don't get into that kind of drama and all that shit. If people want to, that's fine. But yeah, share that link to it, and we'll go have a look at it. You know, it may be something I'm interested in, right? Maybe something I ain't thought of. I'm always open, and I ain't proud. I'm always learning. I try to keep myself humble. Yeah, anybody that's worked in a distillery or you know has expansive knowledge, we welcome all aspects and answers, and if I get anything wrong, by all means correct me. You know, because I mean, you know, we all try to source our information from the best possible source we can, and if we're not learning it, you know, the hard way, which I did a lot of my stuff, but yeah, I'm always open for different perspectives and different opinions. I know a lot of it. You know, there's like, you know, running corn liquor. How many ways is there to do it? From thin mash to fully converted to just, you know, converting on its own, you know, diastatics. There's so many ways to do it. And they're like, you know, you teach the right way. No, I teach a way. There are many right ways. You know, there's many a slip between a cup and a drip, right? And there's many ways to arrive at that drip. And, you know, as long as you got good tasting liquor on that drip, I don't care how you arrived at it, you done something right, right? You did it right. So whatever your methodology is a right way to you. I'm not here to tell anybody that you're doing it wrong or, you know, you see so much of that, you know, you're not doing it right. Well, as long as your drip tastes good, I don't give a shit how you're doing it, you know, unless you're creating toxins, you know, it's good. Of course, alcohol is toxic, so I love hearing a lot of people talk about toxins. And brass, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about brass. Maybe we can spend a little time talking about brass one of these days, and I'll break down and do a little bit of putting together, talking about how each over the years, way back in the day. Hey, Richard, how you doing, brother? Yeah, yeah, you definitely don't want to unless you want vodka, right? So if you produce some vodka, you know, to call it a vodka, it has to come off at 190 plus proof. So if you want to make vodka, you know, you definitely want to create a column and deflegmator and get that high proof coming off, or use a fractional distillation system or something like that. Um, got me sidetracked. Anyway, let me get caught up here. I'm way behind. Yeah, that's what we're all about here. We're all about talking and chatting together. You know, I'll get and talk about my long-winded spills for individual questions, but everybody's welcome. You know, but I will say, if you're not sure and you don't know the answer, answer it anyway. Because if you're wrong, we'll tell you you're wrong. We'll tell you that in a nice way, and don't get butthurt if we correct you on something. Because there are certain things that are factual. So if we say, well, you know, I've heard that too, and a lot of people, because you're only as good, you know, your knowledge is only as good as the source of the knowledge, and a lot of the source of knowledge, people quote other people, and they quote the people, and it's just like that story, you know, as it goes on down the line, you know, it changes. And there's certain things that you may just be misinformed. I've been misinformed on things, and I'm like, oh, really? Wow, I didn't know that. Well, damn, you know, I've been thinking it wrong the whole time, and I've learned something, you know, and you got to be able to humble and not get butt hurt when you get corrected. A lot of people get all hurt and pissed, and they're picking on me and cry and never come back. Well, you know, I'm sorry if you feel that way, but we're all learning together, and if and nobody knows everything, and nobody has all the facts, and the only way you're going to learn is when one of your preconceived notions is proved otherwise. So we have what we think is what the truth and what the facts are, but when somebody presents the facts and can base it on science and other things, then it's like, well, okay, maybe I've been wrong. You got to be humble and be able to say, I was wrong. And there's so many people that can't do that. It just eats away at them, and it's like admitting they're wrong is like saying that they're dumb or a bad person or something. Don't be that way. Don't be that person. It's not like that. None of us were born, none of us came out of the womb with this knowledge. We've got it somehow, somewhere. And there's so many places out there that are disinforming people. And that's another reason we created these groups, is to eliminate a lot of the disinformation. I see it every day that I get on these groups. I see so many wrong answers. I'm not going to be the guy to get in there and say, you're wrong. I'm just not going to do it. I'm tired. I just don't have that kind of energy, and I don't want to come off as an asshole and butt hurt people and everybody hating on me saying it. I just don't want to do it, right? So come here and we'll talk about it, and we'll say, what, we'll be nice about it. We'll say, I used to think that same way until I found out this, or, there's a lot of people that've been told that, and when in reality, this is the way it is, and this is the science behind it. So, yeah, I mean, everybody does. Everybody. George, I've seen, him call a graduated cylinder a beaker. It's okay. Everybody every once in a while is wrong about something, right? And there's lots of little things. And I'm never going to tear somebody down, and say, you're wrong, I'm right. Trying to build myself up. I hate that. I hate people that do that. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you get the proper, when it's a factual thing out there. Now, is it a fact that thin mash is inferior to a grain conversion? No. Because different people, that's subjective. That when it boils down to taste. 99 or 95 out of 100 people might think so, but there's 5 people out of 100 say, by God, I like that thin mash better. And if they like it better, how you going to tell them they're wrong when they like it better? It's subjective. So there's certain things in this that are facts, and there's certain things that are subjective. We now using good, better, best, or more prefer this, that's ways of saying it without saying you're wrong, because you're not wrong. It's subjective. Some people like it that way. Some people don't. If everybody liked it the same way, there'd be only 2 or 3 jars on the shelf at the liquor store, right? So, but we're all learning together. So if you're not sure about something, go ahead and say it, but don't get mad if somebody says, well, that used to be the way a lot of people thought, but we found this is the way it actually is, or this is a better way. Might not be the best way, or, somebody might say, well, that better way is good, but try doing it this way. This is the best way. It's a lot more efficient, a lot easier. Might not be better, but I think for most people, easier might equate to better, especially lazy fuckers like me, right? I'm always looking for the easiest, shortest path, right? I'm, patient, but if I can do something easier, like cooking corn, malted corn, you won't see me doing that anymore, because there's an easier method now. It might not taste as good, and I'll sacrifice that little fractional difference for ease and cost effectiveness all day. I'll never go through a bottle of fucking propane to cook malted corn again. Possibly. I mean, if they'll advertise if they can roll it, steamroll it. Just ask them. They won't mind, and they may offer it. Most mills will offer a product. If they don't offer flake corn, then they probably don't have a roller, steam roller. But it doesn't hurt to call and ask, and That's what right now, if you look on Facebook and you look for your wheat farmers and your rye farmers, a lot of them will talk about it on Facebook Marketplace. Some of them smaller ones, the bigger ones that produce for, you know, General Mills or something like that. They're not, they got thousands of acres. They don't care about us small guys, you know, but the ones that are doing it for cover crops or as a secondary income, or they also have pigs for sale and chickens and sell meat and they sell cows, and they doing everything they can to make a buck kind of farmer. That's ones we want to help support too, right? So right now is a good time to call them. Did you plant any winter wheat this year? When do you expect to come in around July? And let me know. Drop me a Facebook message. But keep them saved. I got a little file folder for me saved at all the farmers around me that grow rye and wheat. And come June, I'm gonna be giving them a call, and I might call them now to see if they got it. I might, especially the ones I've been buying it from. But barley, if find a barley farmer, let me know. Here in Kentucky. Absolutely, yeah. So if you and come out with something new, and unique, that everybody, and it's a good way to learn, because if you think that you know something, and you say, okay, this, and then it's like, no, this is how it actually is. It's not only have you learned something, you've dispelled something that you've been telling people that are wrong, and so you don't look like a fool anymore, right? So you're telling somebody that something's wrong. Be humble about it and say, well, damn, I thought wrong all this time, or I was misinformed. You were misinformed. So you relied on somebody, and that you thought was the buy all end all and the authority on it, and that dude on Reddit was full of shit. And so consider your sources too. So I try to steer away from TikTok and Reddit and a lot of these places where you got a lot of people that profess to know, in Facebook groups especially, that profess to know a lot. And there's a lot of people that are telling you how to do things that's never run the first drop of liquor in their life. And I'd say there's a good 40 or 50% of the people on Facebook that are trying to tell you how to do things that's never run the first drop of liquor in their life. Fact. And if they have, it probably wasn't good, and they still don't know. So take it with a grain of salt, and consider your sources, and try to seek the better sources. That's one of the reasons that we put this together, is so we could get better sources of information out there, because I see so much misinformation in the news groups. That's why we created the militia, is because not only were people giving bad answers, they were dogging the people that were asking the question. Well, that's the stupidest damn question I ever heard. Everybody knows that. No, everybody doesn't know it, neither did they before they learned it. So that's the reason that we created the militia, and I created my group, and me and Eric created our groups, and to eliminate that. And they don't last. You come in there and do that shit, you'll get kicked in a heartbeat. You treat people well. Talk to them respectfully. Don't browbeat them and beat them down, or you'll be asked to leave, or you'll be sent packing. Just don't tolerate it. So if it bothers you, if you get tired of seeing the same question over and over, scroll on by. Don't say anything. But don't ever say, that's a stupid question. Well, hell, everybody knows that. Don't do it. Just don't. Unless you want to help, just scroll by. It's the same in here. And, people don't realize it. A box of cereal is cornflakes, right? Cornflakes is cornflakes. So that's steamrolled. You don't have to cook them. Bran flakes, that's weeded, flaked, gelatinized wheat. So yeah, and I can't say enough about the benefits of bran flakes, and even raisin bran if you want the flavor of the raisins and the softness of the raisins to help influence it. But raisin bran and dead yeast are some of the best nutrients mixed together. Oh, it's a good, excellent nutrient. And you don't have to pay a big bunch of money and deal with diammonium phosphates, and if you're worried about urea and but that's generally in the diammonium phosphates that they use for fertilizer, right? But I guess there might be some companies that put that out there for fermentations, but I don't think LD Carlson has it in there. They may. They say they don't. But Fermo, Fermo is basically just yeast hulls, dead yeast. And if we save, right, after we do our fermentations, if we save that muck in the bottom and we sieve it out and we strain it, right, strain all the grains and stuff out of it, just keep the powdery slurry, that's your dead yeast hulls. They're not big, huge things that are going to get trapped into a strainer, right? That's going to be all your grain particles and stuff like that. And rinse it with water. We talked about that. Get the alcohol kind of rinsed out of it with some distilled water. And there'll be some live yeast in there as well. So you can propagate your yeast, drop a little sugar in there every once in a while, and feed them and keep them alive, keep them at a decent temp, or you can put them in the fridge and make them go dormant, and they'll come back, But yeah, it's yeah, we've got a good system together, and again, we love having people help. Scott helps out a lot. We got a lot of people that come in and help out a lot. So, Clint helps me out a lot. Everybody here is on a volunteer basis. I'm volunteering my time, and Clint, since I got started, he's volunteered his time to help me out as well, and it's good. And Scott comes in and helps out, and Oshin's learning, he's helping out. So, Oshin, when you're learning stuff and come in and you say something and we say, well, I don't know if that'll work that well or not. You might don't get mad or mean, don't think I'm being mean or nothing, because it's something new, like the back set in the barrel, before you put the liquor in. I don't know, it might muddy it up, and it might prevent the alcohol from getting into those pores and doing its thing, right? So the only way to figure it out would be to experiment. It's hard to theoretically, conceive what would happen without actually doing the experiment, doing it with back set soaked in, doing it without, and doing it with back set in the liquor but not the barrel. You'd have to do, 3 different ways to see which works the best, right? So don't get mad if somebody says something, and that to all beginners, and everybody just getting started. But Oshi, he's gone down the rabbit hole, man. He's doing a lot of research, and I love the questions because it does make you think about things from a different angle. I like that. What's going on, brother? Yes, it has been a while, and oh my God, I'm not that far behind. My goodness, I've been long-winded tonight. Yep, we found out too. Lord, I'm gonna have to miss a lot of these. Let's see. I'm looking for questions instead of comments with each other. That's good, JJ. I'm telling you, that paper, I dealt with pens for years and years and years. They're nice $9 pens, but for $12 I got a roll, and I couldn't find it, and then I get another roll. So I've got 2 rolls here now, and that'll last me for a long, long time. As long as you keep them in a cool, dry place without a lot of light, dark, cool, dry place. Easy to use, and I don't use a whole inch. I use a half inch, so I get twice as many uses out of them as they say. I just use them on tweezers, stick it down in there and swish it around. And we don't have to be that exact, so we don't need, 3.2974449. We don't need that exactness with these pens and stuff, So just, we need to know roughly, is this stressing my yeast or not? That's all I want to know. Is it in the 3s or the 2s? Is it 3.5? Is it closer to 4? Where am I at? And it's definitely great for that. Yeah, using a sweet corn, it's going to be different from you. Sweet corn has its sweetness already in the corn. It's not a starchy corn, right? So it's going to be a different process. It's great, but my thoughts on it are, if you want to do it, fine. You can grind the cob and the whole ear up and everything and do it just as you normally would. Cook it and gelatinize it and use your amylase and all that. What starches are in there, it'll go ahead and convert. Probably getting some starch out of the cob, right? And there's probably going to be some cellulase in there that's going to help break down and break down some of your, cob and other things. And you got the glucanase in there. There's any glucans getting broken down. So, but it's just a different sweetness, and it's great, but it's so expensive, right? Sweet corn, I think, is best on the table or in the thumper. I think that's the best place for your sweet corn because it's expensive. And yellow dent is so cheap, $7, $8 for a 50-pound bag, and even cheaper if you know a farmer. I mean, hell, 20, $30, he'll fill the bed of your truck up with it, if it's a big farm. Or he'll fill totes up for you, for next to nothing. If you go in there with barrels, whatever you got, they'll fill them up for next to nothing. They can't get rid of it fast enough. They're quick. They got more than their cows can eat. So, and in that case, it's going to be a lot cheaper, than 25 cents an ear, like a sweet corn is going to be, right? Or 10, 15 cents an ear even, if it's a great deal. So, but the sweet corn makes excellent puree. So if you want to grind that cob and all that sweet corn up and grind it fine and or blend it and put that in your thumper with a little cream corn, or that'll add some really good flavor to your corn liquor, and that's probably where it's best used. But yeah, you can use sweet corn just the same. But I think that you'll get as much sugar out of a starch conversion as you will sweet out of the sweet corn, right? So it's not going to give you more or higher gravity, but it's just less reliant, I guess, on those enzymes because it's less starchy of a corn. Field corn is selectively bred and used because it has those high starches, and in a cow's stomach, they've got those multi-chambered stomachs that can break that down, and in our stomachs do the same. We've got all these enzymes in our stomachs that convert these complex starches into sugars that our cells use just the same, right? So all that's in our bodies, so we see all these enzymes breaking it down. You've got those same enzymes in your spit on down to your stomach, into your bowels, into your intestines. There's enzymes there that are still breaking stuff down and sending nutrients to your body. It's just, physiology is very interesting once you break it down and learn a lot of that about it, right? So, but it's just different, but yeah, it's expensive. So unless you're a farmer, and if you got a bunch, or if you got a farmer that says, yeah, we've already picked all the corn we want, there's a whole field for anything that's on the ground you can have, go in there with bags, get all you can, and yeah, you can make you some liquor with it just the same. It makes good liquor. Yeah. Once you get into the groove, the only time that will, once you get into the groove, you'll know what your pH is of the water coming out of your tap or the water that you're using. Whether it's from a stream, it'll vary from a stream. If you're using tap and filtering it, you'll be pretty much the same all the time. If you're using, distilled water from a certain company, it'll be fairly, consistent. And you'll know exactly how much citric acid to add to that, right, when you're boiling it up to do your conversions. If you're listening to Old Santa now, that's what you'll do. And you'll know exactly how much you need to add to get it to that 5.3-ish range. It doesn't have to be exact. It's wanted acidic to help break those bonds up, right? Those glycosidic bonds. That's just like in inverting sugar. You're using citric acid or lemon juice for the same purpose. We're doing it here as well for the same purpose. It just speeds up the process. It's a catalyst of breaking the bonds. But once we do that, yeah, sugar. I'll never knock a sugar wash, brother. Hey, that's right. Don't knock it. All of us want a cheap, easy way to, and to make like a vodka, and where you're running it through plates and taking a lot of the flavor out, it's perfectly fine, you know. And when you're going to post flavor, you know, you want that neutral. You don't want influence from others. You'll never hear me knocking the sugar shine. Hell, I love, you know, every once in a while, you just don't want to, you know, go through the grind, right? When they talk about the grind, well, that means a whole new story to us, right? When we talk about the grind, that means breaking out the corn and grinding all the, you know, grinding it all down, putting your nose to the grindstone. That kind of work, it's not easy. Everybody be doing it. Yeah, that's when you want the glucanase, right? The beta glucanase and the gumminess. That's what you're seeing is glucans, and that's in your wheat, it's in your rye, it's in your oats, you know, it's in barley, it's in all those the seed type grains like that. Not so much in your corn, but in all those, yeah, you're going to deal with that gumminess, and that's when you want your beta glucanase, right, to come in and help break down that gumminess and convert that gumminess into the goodness, right? So, yeah, they're hard to work with, but I mean, it's just like gelatinized corn. You just need that specialized enzyme that will thin them out and break them down, right? And if you look, you know, there's pretty much enzymes for most everything. There's proteases for protein. There's just so many different. Do some research on these enzymes, Oshin, and you'll see. So there's so many, but they're simply named. A lot of them are named like glucanase, the glucans, nase, protease, you know, amylase, uh, beta amylase, glucoamylase, and so a lot of them are named based on what they break down. You know, there's so many of them. There's a lot of different enzymes, but learn about those. Yeah, I did thin mashes forever. You know, I did cornmeal and sugar and water for a long, long time before I learned anything about grain conversions and before the internet, you know, long before the internet ever came along, back in the 70s, you know. And, you know, we didn't have Amazon or local brew stores or any of that, you know, where I grew up. Didn't have malted grains either, you know. Few people malted their own corn and went through that long, arduous task, but most people made thin mash or sugar shine. Started with 2 inch down to half inch on my keg and then stayed with it. Those little Vevers are fine, aren't they? And, you know, Earl, I see a lot of people knocking them little Vevers, and you see I'm rocking that, and I've got bigger steels, hell yeah, but I don't produce like that anymore. But yeah, I mean, those 18.5 gallon football steels are nice for a couple $100. Buy you a big 18.5 gallon pot. I mean, hell, just to buy a bayou pot to make your gumbo in cost that much, you know, and got a good lid that you can seal and you can ferment in. You can got a nice little football head on it. Hell yeah. Yeah, a lot of people knock it just because they hate the Chinese. Now, I ain't no fan of the Chinese government. There ain't no mystery about that, you know. And I don't get political on here, but the Chinese people are fine people, you know, in general. You know, they do what they're, you know. Do we want to be judged by one of our politicians? Do Democrats want to be judged by Trump? Probably not. Do Republicans want to be judged by Biden? Probably not. That's about as political as I get, but people don't want to be judged by their leaders. So, you know, we're different, right? And I think the same about most people, you know, and I'll not get too deep into that, but a lot of people don't like those Weber steels because they're China. They're Chinese steels. They're trash. You know, it's a stainless boiler. It works pretty damn fine, you know. But I will say, you know, there are probably better caps that can be made. Nice copper cap, you know, horse heads, you know, are nice coming off those, just like a keg. But it's a nice boiler. You know, now the football's pretty okay for a beginner, but eventually you're going to want to be able to add a little column on it, and you can add you a little horse head on there, and you know that little football makes an okayish horse head. It makes good brandy and whiskey. You can put your copper in there, but you know if you want a real horse head with a nice line arm, you know, Phil Billy and some of them can make you that, and it does work great. And I know I'm way far behind. Well, now since barley and hops came out with that, and that's years ago, um, you want to cut down on the peroxide, right? So anytime you add that peroxide with it, it really what's catalyzes it, it's the proper word, and to the point where it can become cost. It can eat away at the copper, and when you create something that's going to eat away, so you have a nice slick surface, right? If you look at the surface of copper under an electron microscope, it's quite rough, uh, but it looks pretty smooth, right? Now, as acids start eating away at that, it becomes even rougher and rougher and rougher. And the rougher it is, and the more pitted it is, even though it looks kind of shiny on the surface, when you look at it under a microscope, it gets more pitted and pitted and pitted. And the more pitted it becomes, the more surface area is created, and the easier it is to oxidize. So really, the only time you want to use that 551 is when you have it a really heavily oxidized, a lot of green, and it's just not coming off with traditional methods with just citric acid and water. Then adding that extra peroxide will make it more aggressive. But at the same time, once you go down that rabbit hole, you create more surface area, then it'll be that much easier for it to oxidize and turn green again. And then you're fighting an uphill battle. Another drawback with copper. It is, yeah, it's harsh on your copper. And didn't know that. I didn't know that either. I always used the 551, thought it was best, and then learned the science behind it, and it was proven. Now it's something that you want to only use in extreme circumstances. So if you get an old steel and it's just green as can be inside, and you've used citric acid and water, ain't touching it, nothing else is touching it, then you might have to step up if you want to use it, right? So you might have to use that and just fight that battle, but accept it, you know. But you can season your copper too, and once it gets oxidized to a certain point where it becomes dark, that's okay, because that'll actually form a layer of oxidate to protect it as such. But at the same time that it protects it, it's also less contact with sulfides, right? So you get that oxidative layer protecting it. That's less for your uh, for the let me get through my little brain fart here. My mind's doing little crazy things, man. It does it for me. But it's it won't be able to bond, right? Because it's got that layer blocking it. So, you know, you want to keep it shiny so you'll get that, you can, you know, attract it and it'll bond. But at the same time, um, if you get that oxidative layer blocking it, um, they won't be able to bond to it. Because the because the outer layer of electrons in these sulfides bond to the outer layer of the copper, and that's how they pulls them out like a magnet. And these outer, it's called outer valence of electrons, and it'll attach to it readily. But if you get that oxidative layer, you've got a lot of oxygen that have bonded to that outer valence of copper and formed an oxidative layer, and they can't bond anymore because it doesn't have that receptive. It's not receptive to the atoms on that outer valence, and that's why it won't work as well. Right. So once you've developed that, the sulfides don't work as much anymore, which is why it's good to season that copper that way and use that mesh, even steel. That way you get all the benefits of the copper. You won't have to clean it as often. You won't have to worry about the green oxides building up, and it's a different oxidative layer, and it's all called oxides. But when it's a heated, right? When you use a lot of heat with the copper, it gets dark, and over time it will season it. It's kind of like an old cast iron pan. You season it with that heat, and that heat and oxidative forms that darker copper, and that's fine, because you get the benefit of that heat, being able to disperse the heat evenly over a large area, and you get that benefit, and you don't have to worry about cleaning it. It is about that time. I look forward to seeing it, brother. What's going on, Mr. Shadow? Beginner here. What should my specific gravity be for the mash before I throw it into the still? Should be close to zero. You want all your sugars to be consumed, so it's close to zero or actually less will mean it's dry. So you don't necessarily want it to go less than zero, because when you have a dry mash, that dryness will carry over to your distillate. Now that can be a good thing if you're like a gin maker. Having that good dry, carryover is good. If you're a brandy maker, probably not so good, because you don't want that brandy to be real dry. So sometimes you want some of that little sweetness to carry over, and your brandies give you a little more flavor. Same with whiskeys, So, but for a lot of people, we can't just stop, right? So if you're in a business to do this, you can just stop, and when it gets to a certain point, you're ready to run because you have nothing else to do. So if you're retired and this is a hobby, you can do that. But if you work for a living, like most of us do, then you're going to have to wait. Well, I can't do nothing until next weekend, so it is what it is, right? If it gets a little dry, it gets a little dry because I can't run it right now. So it's a little different, but if you can run it exactly, it depends on the distillate. So sometimes you want to run it at 1.0050 instead of 1.0000 or 0.0998 or something like that. The drier it gets, that will carry over. So, but generally speaking, when it gets to around zero is when it's time to do. When it gets to 1.0 or 0.09 or 0.99 something, it's fine. That's when it's time to go. Some of them will never get to that point though. Like we talked earlier about limit dextrins and oligosaccharides and other sugars that are in there. Your hydrometer will measure sugars. It won't measure fermentable sugars. You have to have specialized equipment for that. So it's just telling you how much sugar's in there. It's not telling you whether it's fermentable sugar. So sometimes you'll get down to that 1.005 and it just won't go any lower, or 1.010 and it just won't go any lower, or 2.0 with some of the rums and stuff, which if that happens, you can use specialized yeast that will help finish it more. And but sometimes, or you can use amylase and enzymes to help finish it, or we learned tonight some lacto can help finish it right for you. You need you a steel house, but you need a big utility shed with your stuff. And you can have your utility shed, and then she can have her pout house, what we call a pout house. When they get mad, they can have a place to go read their books and pout. Uh, but you both need your own little shed. And that's the best way to do it. You can have your steel house, or she can have her pout house. Instead of outhouse, we call them pout houses. You can go in there and pout. Well, brother, I hope we help you out, because that's what we're here for. And like I say, nothing wrong with corn and sugar. Right? Not if you're not converting to corn, we're not going to look at you like you're a sinner. We all do it. I've done thin mashes for a long, long time. I'll never browbeat anybody for doing it. I like it. It's still good. Is it better than all conversions? No. Is it a hell of a lot easier? Yes. So, yeah, she's going to figure it out. And I will say, O'Shane, I don't know if she drinks or not, or if she likes wine or what, but you can soften them up a little bit with wine sometimes, because they might not like the shine. But if you make a little wine and brandy and a little strawberry champagne or something, I know women have a little weakness for my strawberry champagne, and for my sweet heat. And like the sweet heat, before we found out she got diabetes, I had made a white wine. It was sweet, and it was by technical standards quite astringent. So it has a pretty good alcohol, flavor, and it's strong, but it's sweet at the same time. And it's like drinking, almost like drinking a mixed drink, man. It'll fuck you up. It's like 15%, 30 proof wine. Yeah, it's like a mixed drink almost. I'm sorry, Richard. I'm way behind, brother. Hope you and Charlene are doing well, brother. Good to see you, man. HTL, there you go. That's the HTL, man. That's changed. It's a game changer. Yeah, that Boca Cobb now, it'll do it. That Boca Bob, um, Boca Cobb. I always call it Boca Bob too. It's Boca Cobb, K-O-B. I don't know. I always thought it was Boca Bob, and I call it Boca Bob still. But yeah, it's quite interesting, and it's high proof, man. It'll crank out high proof. I think Eric made one. Eric Ayers. I mean, he did quite a bit of experimenting in steel stuff too, and he made one of his own and produced high proof, man. You can get to high mid 190s. That ain't easy, but it's slow. It's real slow. Yeah, I'm having to re-educate myself, Ocean. I'm getting old, man. I used to know a lot more than I do now, and I can't remember a lot of things. But I re-educate myself and learn it again and again and again. And I've got dementia. My family. I don't have dementia, but it's probably my genetics. My sister had it. My dad, of course, he's in his late 80s, so it's expected at that age. But there'll be a day and a time when I won't be able to share anymore, brother. You'll have to take you and Clint and Scott and everybody else have to take the reins and help educate everybody. There's a lot of sources. You just have to search it out. I'd say Amazon's probably one of the worst places to get. It's going to be expensive. Um, you can ask Phil and some of these grain dealers. They may be able to find it for you. But let me see if I can find some on just quick looky look here on Facebook. And let's see. Let me go to Marketplace. I found out somebody's talking to me the other day, and I was trying to explain certain things to them, and they were looking at Facebook on the phone. It's so much harder to find Marketplace on the damn phone than it is on the computer, man. It's crazy. And let's see. Yeah, unfortunately, when you type in flake corn, you get either cereal bowls or old cornflake ads or sports cars cornflakes, or let's see, there's a Star Wars Darth Vader on a cornflake box, and and then you get regular corn. So might have to do a Google search and go a little deeper and look up. But meals, no shell corn. Yeah, might have to get in touch with some meal houses and just talk with farmers too. A lot of farmers, they may know of some. I say, Roy Carruthers and Sean at Appalachia, um, they probably, they used to work in the milling industry and stuff, and may still, I don't know. But, yeah, they may be able to help you. Very knowledgeable. Those guys know a lot about grains, too. Very knowledgeable. Like I say, we got a lot of knowledgeable people in the community. Sean Peterman and Roy Carruthers that run Appalachia. Good dudes. And very knowledgeable, both of them very knowledgeable about grains and stuff. I think Sean might have worked at maybe still does. He was the one that taught me about propionic acid that they put on a lot of these grains that you can rinse off and help get better flavor. And I wasn't aware of that, but he knew from being in the industry. So that's why it's good to know people in the industry. But yeah, I'm not seeing any flake corn on here other than just the damn cereal boxes. It sucks. So, yeah, you might have to do a Google dive on that, but should be able to find somebody, talk to some farmers, but, Google steamrolling and flake corn, and you should be able to find something. Might be a little bit of a drive, and it's going to be a little pricey, but I'm sure you'll find better prices than especially if you're going to do a large amount. Small amounts, I'm sure that if you ask in the groups, they'll probably have some, for smaller amounts and for craft like what we do. I'm sure there's quite a few people out there that will carry it. I think Phil might carry it. But if you're doing high volume and you're doing it for a living, cost is everything. Would I recommend a thumper for a beginner who isn't planning on infusing? I hear just having a thumper alone is like a rerun. No, I wouldn't. It's not a beginner's tool at all. It's a specialty tool, and you'll find a use for it. But it's just like that one tool that you pull out for a special use. Like if you're an auto mechanic, there's a certain spanner or a certain type of tool that's made by even the auto industry for that specific purpose. So I'd like to get off here for too long. Yeah, it's about 10:30. I've got something I got to do, but there'll be specific tools for everything, and that thumper is a specific tool for a specific thing. Great for infusing, great for running tails, but to put it on there for everything you do is a mistake a lot of people tend to make, and I see that mistake a lot. You don't need a thumper on there for everything you do. And a lot of times, increasing your proof and stripping water out is not what you want. Sometimes it is. As far as the Vever steels, and I stream this to Vever Madness page that they all talk about the different Vevers. So hopefully we get some people from there and they can bring their perspectives in. But a lot of the 3 pots are fine. They're a good deal. They're a good value for what you get. Again, is it the best? No, it's not. You're going to have to work on it, right? So if you don't mind doing some modifications and you enjoy doing that thing, then that's fine. If you don't want to mess with it a lot, this football steel is the direction you should go. I've probably sold thousands of these for Vevers because I've been recommending them ever since I got the first one. And I'm not proud, and I'm not going to knock it because of where it's made. It's a good little boiler, and it works good. Now, the 3 pots, they're fine too, but you got to have to put work into them. Again, you're going to have to increase the size of the copper coming off of them, and you're going to have to change the gaskets, the little small gaskets that are fitting those bulkheads coming through the lid. Those things break all the time. They're not good. So, but after you increase the plumbing size and you change your gaskets out and you increase the size of your condenser and you eliminate that little puke pit pot, then the slobber box, puke pot, whatever you want to call it. Once you get that done right for a little thumper, if you want to use a thumper, then they're not bad at all. But you have to do all that to them to get it to where it's a decent. But this one you start out with a good steel. Is this better than a football? It's 18.5 gallons, so you can run 15. In a keg, it's 15.5 gallons, so you can run 13.5 without worrying about puking and all that. Maybe more for those that, I've gotten 14.25 before. Okay. But it'll run a little bit more, so it's nice for that. But it's just a stainless vessel that you can boil in, and has a 2.5 inch orifice on the top there, which you don't get that much back pressure, so you can regulate your temperatures well. Great setup. But a keg is going to be, something that you can beat around, throw on the back of the truck. Nobody's going to see it. Cops see it. It's a beer keg, right? So it's kind of disguised a little bit better, and it's a lot more durable. Well, we don't want it to be bigger. We keep it small, and we try to keep it to just good people. We try to weed out a lot of the bullshitters and riffraff and cops at ATF and stuff. So we try to keep it because it's Whereas the DIY side of stuff, it's just more open. As long as we know you're not a bot, we'll let you in there. And we'll give you a chance, and if you start being an asshole, we'll kick you. And they're probably watching every group, whether you're a member or not. They probably have access to it. We know that the government has forced them to do things in the past, so we know that they cave and they do anything they want to do. They'll even ban your speech. All right, I'm going to have to scroll through here and try to get caught up. No, do not. That was an old Phil Billy video. He was just showing that you could do it. It was kind of a joke thing that went crazy, got millions of views, and don't. It was one of those, don't try this at home kind of thing, but it can be done. So in the zombie apocalypse, if you can't find a steel, and you need to make alcohol and you're MacGyver, you can do this, right? But yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. it was kind of one of those it can be done kind of things. That's what we're trying to do, brother. We plant the seeds of the future. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this whether it's acid, what level, I don't need to know it to the hundreds or the thousands for this. This isn't that critical. 3, 4, 5. Tell me which is it? Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's one thing I like about. I use the strips that are there for kombucha, which is basically a fermented tea, and I use these kombucha strips because I guess they can't call it moonshine strips, but kombucha strips, and it basically deals with pHs from 0 to 7. So it just deals with acidic, and that's what we deal with. We never want anything basic at all because that promotes bacterial growth. So we definitely want to deal with the more acidic ones, right? So that's why I use the kombucha ones because they're a lot easier to read, and the colors are a lot more different. Some of those ones that go from 1 to 15 is like, well, God, I can't tell if it's a 6 or a 7. And that's a big swing. But with the ones that go from 0 to 7, it's the colors are quite different and easy to read for an old man. I'm gonna try to get caught up here a little bit. Yep, it is about wet whistling time, and I will say we're not going to be here this weekend. Got something I'm going to be doing, and Ann's going out of town, so I've got something I'm going to be up to, and not going to be here Saturday. So everybody's going to have a day off, and I know you're going to miss us, and just sit there and twiddle your thumbs and look at the screen and like, oh my God, what am I going to do today? The show's not here. I'm going to have to drink alone. But I apologize. That doesn't happen often, but every once in a while I have to take a little time away. And as the festivals come, we'll try to do some, as I'm at festivals and stuff during festival season, we'll try to do a little live, to say hey. But we might not do we might not do it all. I don't know a lot, but we ask that you only put English on there. I don't know what that means. It could be something bad and derogatory or negative. We talk about alcohol and not politics or races or any of that stuff. Got some good rye, huh? Awesome. Yeah, malted rye, good. It helps helps change the flavor in wheat. Malted wheat's good. It helps take some of that grassy sweetness out of it too. Yeah, it is easier. Yeah, man. Yeah, Ozark, Wayne will hook you up and fill both. Most all these steel builders will make stuff that'll go on those because there's just so damn many of them. And you can put anything on that tri clamp on top. That's the beautifulness of the modularity. I showed some of my old stuff that I had coming off my Viver. It looks like a refinery, and I can explain it. And once I do, it's like, well, damn. That's the way to go because it logically it is the way everybody should be doing it. You can open up one valve and you can strip, or you can shut that valve, open up another valve, and go a different direction and infuse. Never have to take her down, right? So, yeah. And I could patent all that stuff, and I could have patented the bypass and all that shit, but I'm not trying to make money off this. And if there's a micro distillery out there that wants to or a craft distillery out there that wants to scale up what I've got, I'll give them all the information I have and share it with them for free. Now, if you want me to come help you set it up, it's going to cost you, but I wouldn't mind doing that either. I'll help any way I can, if I can. Well, we're talking about making liquor. That's what we talk about here. We talk about making wine and whiskey and bourbon and gin and absinthe, anything you want to make, beer. That's what we talk about. Fermenting and distillation. That's right. Damn, hillbilly, you are late, brother. You hear about closing time, man. I used to do that at the bars. That way I don't have to sit there and drink with women all damn night. I can just go in there and pick them up when it's closing time, right? Awesome. I'm glad you made it. You got to get here earlier, brother, though. Got to get here early. Now, we're not going to be here Saturday, so I apologize to everybody. And like I said, during the festival season, there's going to be some Saturdays that I'm not going to be here. So we'll do some lives, some remotes, the militia at the festivals, And there may be some times when I may have to postpone or, if the militia wants to do a live broadcast from a festival or something like that on a Saturday, then I won't be, on at that time. So if they, I'll schedule my show around that. If they want to, a lot of times they'll do it earlier though than 8. They'll get on there about 5, and so hopefully we can, still be on, and they can do theirs from 5 to 7 or 5 to 8, and then we can just pick up and continue doing our show. If I'm not there, if I'm there, we won't be doing the show. Definitely ain't gonna try to do like what Clint does and do it on a damn phone and use text to speech and all that shit. Nope. I can't imagine the autocorrect shit that I would get myself into. Tepache. No, I've not made any tepache. I think old Damon likes that tepache. And I think that, isn't that mostly with, is that the one where they use the chickens and stuff? Oh, that's pineapple. So I've made, yeah, I was thinking of something else. I was thinking, what's the one? Pachuga. I was thinking Pachuga. Tepache. Yeah, I've made tepache. But Pachuga, I've not done the Pachuga. But yeah, I've done the tepache. And actually I do a rum. I use the pineapple with a brown sugar and a little molasses and make a pineapple rum. And it's damn good. It's real good. Yeah, I was thinking the Pachuga. And I've not tried that, and I don't know if I will or not. I don't know about hanging a chicken in my still and all that, but they do that for tequila. But I don't know what my mind. Yeah, I've done tepache. It's good. But as far as whiskey, I've not aged it, but I've run it more as a rum. Try it as a rum sometime with your pineapple. Now I used the natural yeast off of it and did the skin and everything like a true Hawaiian tepache, and but when you do that, make sure that you allow that wild yeast to do its thing and die, because wild yeast do not have a high alcohol tolerance. So once you do that, they'll die off, and once they die, then you can follow up with an EC 1118 or something that you want to follow up with, a rum yeast, or if you want to use that. That way you don't have them competing, and the actual yeast can go in there and consume all the dead wild yeast and feed on those for a little nutrients. Probably wouldn't be bad. But yeah, yeah. I was thinking Pachuga at first. I'm like, hell, no, I'm not done none of that. But yeah, I've done. Try it with rum though. Yeah, try it with molasses and some brown sugar and the dark brown sugar, and it's good, man. It's really good. But yeah, I've got some in there. In fact, got a few cases of that good stuff. But I used the whole pineapple. I didn't use just the skins. I used the whole damn thing, man. I pureed the fruit part and blended it up, mixed it up, chopped it up, blended it, and pureed that, and then threw in the skins along with it. You know, and yeah, it's good. It's good rum. Damn good pineapple rum for sure. Sounds good. Make sure you put a little, get some of that rum yeast. I'm telling you that rum yeast has some extra enzymes in it. You know, they were talking about on the show about yeast adding enzymes to their yeasts. You know, to help um, promote, you know, more finished and attenuate a little better. So yeah, there's a lot of yeast that will now, like rum yeast and tequila yeast and specialized yeast that will, and you know, some of the yellow label, you know, there's a lot of different yeast now that are including enzymes in there to help. So definitely helps. Yeah, it's you probably had some lactobacillus. It's very common. You know, it's very common. And like I say, it's the world's not lost if you want to create some lactobacillus. Like I say, get a good quality Greek yogurt. None of this, you know, low fat or low this, or just a good quality, high quality Greek yogurt, and you can create your own lactobacillus with just that. Let me see what the best. Let me see what that rum yeast was. I know it's got a brown package. Distillers rum yeast, rum distillers yeast is what they call it, and it's kind of in a brown tan with a brown. You'll know it when you see it. Still Spirits, I think, makes it. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and yeah, that's all Still Spirits. Rum distillers yeast is what they call it, and that's good stuff. Don't get the rum turbo. get the Still Spirits. They make a pretty good one. And let's see, I think I can post a little picture of it here. I don't think the company or anybody would mind. Maybe they'll send me some. Wouldn't that be nice? Get a little endorsement. Have to put a little commercial up. Still Spirits. What do you think? I could sing it. Sing the little. That stuff. Then it says a blend of yeast nutrients, enzyme, vitamins, and trace minerals. Good stuff. And it's got enzymes like we were talking about that'll help finish it dry to help with the molasses and help break those up. And I think it's probably just a glucose in there. Do I? Yeah, I've never done an absinthe. So, you know, I just mentioned that a minute ago. I've never done an absinthe, and that's something that I'm definitely wanting to do. I want to do an all malt, you know, just a 100% barley, just a single malt. I've never done a single malt, you know, and I'm going to do that. Um, but most everything I've tried a lot of crazy shit over the years, but those would be two that's definitely something on my bucket list is to do an absinthe, you know, and get the wormwood and everything and do it right. I know there's a lot of failures when people try to do that, but I want to do it just so I've done it and have it, and hopefully, read as much as I can on it, like you do, and learn as much as I can before I do it. That way, you have a better chance of success. Um, but yeah, definitely want to try an absinthe, and then this summer I'm probably going to do a single malt, just an all barley malt. And I've done a lot of different grains, a lot of multi grains, but I've never done just a barley. Barley's expensive, yeah. For me, buying malted barley is $2 a pound because I don't have a farmer. Everything else I can get is cheap as dirt. The wheat I can get for $7, $8 for a 50-pound bag. The rye I can get for $7, $8, $10 a 50-pound bag. But barley, malted barley is $2 a pound, and I've never found it any cheaper. So, to do 50 pounds of that for a 25-gallon wash, that's $100. It's a lot of money, to invest for that. That's why I don't do a lot of, I've done a lot of different heirloom corns and, Amanda Palmer. I haven't done a Oaxacan green yet. I want to get some of the green corn and try it. I want to do the Argentine orange corn and try some of that just once to see the uniqueness and the difference. That way I can describe it without having to, give a written description that somebody else did, right? But most of your Black Bloody Butcher and your, Hopi Blues and your Ohio Blues and all the common stuff I've done. But the Oaxacan green and the Argentine orange I've not done yet. I want to try those. Um, but I say those about it. I've done gins. I've done pretty much most everything. I hadn't done a lot of gins because I'm not a big gin fan. And people tend to make what they like until they get bored, and then they start branching out and trying different things because they're just bored. And as a hobby, that's what you do as a hobbyist. You just do different things to say you have and to do it. But I've not done an absinthe, and that's probably one of the I know, I know, Alan, he's the man to talk to, for sure. And we were going to try to have Alan on. It's near the end of February. We're going to try to have him back on in February, and just went by so quick, and I wasn't able to. But we're going to definitely try to get him on here in March. I know as things warm up, and they're going to ramp up production. I have a lot more people there on the lake, up there at his distillery. So he's going to be a lot busier during the warmer months. So we need to get him back on here before he gets too busy for us. But definitely want to get Alan back on here, and we can go over some specific topics, and talk about some things. And maybe absinthe probably definitely be one of them, because definitely going to be picking his brain and wanting to definitely to try that. But awesome question. Now, is she going to answer my question? What does she like to drink? Yeah, and if you get a chance, watch some of Alan's old videos. Him and can't shit, can't think of the guy's name. Things get on the tip of my tongue, and I can't roll it off there sometimes like I used to be able to. But that kills me. But he and some friends, Eric. Yeah, Eric. What was his Eric? I can't remember his last name now, but Eric popped up there. But a few years ago, I could remember all that. But Wolf and some of his friends. One day I won't be able to come up with Eric or Wolf. My mind's going. But him and some of his friends did some reenactments. And I mean, they dressed in period attire and did all that and made videos of it. And it's awesome. You got to watch it. If you haven't already, you definitely watch it. And nothing that you've made so far. Well, vodka's easy. You can pretty much make a vodka out of everything. Just make it high proof as you can make it. Get you a column and a deflegmator. Get it up to 190 flavorless, and then just proof it down with distilled water and and you can make some good vodka that way. Vodka's easy. Man, you're lucky. Good thing she didn't say a good white wine or a red wine or something like that that's hard. Yeah, you want your fruit to be very ripe. The riper it gets, I mean, you don't want it to be overly ripe, because what happens is it's similar to in grains, but it's a little different. But sugars get consumed. So as it ripens up, it'll reach a peak of ripeness, and that means that peak of ripeness is where the sugars are the highest content. Then it starts degrading. So once it starts bruising and discoloring and breaking down, sugars are being consumed, right? So there's yeast on there on the surface. There's wild yeast that are literally consuming some of those sugars. Can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. It can give off flavors. So you're starting to lose, once it gets overly ripe, you're starting to lose sugar content all the way down to where it's just, totally decomposed. And that's part of the process to feed the seed, right? So there is a point in which every fruit has that pinnacle and that peak of sweetness that you want to stop it at and use it at that peak. Because once it starts on the downside, just like the amylase in the grains, you want to stop it right when it's at its peak, and when you have the most endosperm in that grain, and you want the most amylase that's still in that grain. You don't want to get it when it's already started converting and sending out that radical and sending out that little root. It's the same thing with fruit. There's a peak, and if you can get it at that peak, that's when it's going to be its sweetness, and it had the most fructose. Yeah, I know, man. Does that make you thirsty? Everybody got sick. Well, it probably not from the actual jug. Most of the milk jugs these days are made of a plastic that's a lot safer than it was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They actually did public service announcements where I grew up, because there was so much moonshine, and it's put in them old milk jugs. And those old milk jugs weren't made of the same quality that they are now. And it might have been propaganda just to scare you away from drinking moonshine, but I don't know. But probably stressed yeast and doing it improperly creates a lot of off flavors and bacteria. If it wasn't done with an acidic environment, bacteria can start building up, and there's that's why a lot of prisons shine too. We don't talk about a lot of prison wine, which is because it's done with such low standards that you get sick from it. So that's one of the reasons we really try to teach safety and teach the proper way of doing it. That way, your acidic environment, you've got low oxygen, you've got an anaerobic acidic environment, which is not very conductive to bacterial buildup. So that's why we try to teach everybody how to do it safely and not get sick. I don't want even my friends and my followers getting sick. So we try to teach safety. But thanks for joining us. Good to have you with us. We're here every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 Eastern. Won't be here this weekend. I'm going to be out of town, so we'll be back next Tuesday at 8 Eastern. So hit that bell on YouTube, and when we go live, you'll get a little notification. There's other shows we have too that I'm not on, but we have Wayne and Amanda on, and they have a great show on once a month on Friday, and it's an excellent show. Also very, very, very educational show. So it's also something I highly recommend to follow and watch. Yeah, I mean, if you're back down to 10999, you're just getting a lot of oxygen. The big bubbles that come off of a mash, the big bubbles are oxygen. The small bubbles are CO2. So you can skim that off any spent grains. You can skim off the top, pitch, and once it settles, everything settles, and you got a grain bed, or grain bed and yeast bed in the bottom. I'm not crazy. There's really a moth flying around. You may not see it. I'm not the crazy guy with the imaginary moths, but yeah, damn, it's driving me nuts. There, I got you. Nope, I didn't. Did that time though. I get these moths around here. They're bad as fruit flies. But yeah, just skim it off and rack it off, and if you want to press your grains out, but with USJGM, I wouldn't. If it's liquid, just add some water to it to lower the alcohol content, and get ready for your next one. Yeah, it could probably have been, 4 shots. I'd say it's probably just stress yeast, and people got sick because it tasted so bad, and probably had heads in it. If it's tangy, are you talking about just the mash or the distillate? Now, the mash will always be kind of tangy because it's going to be oxygenated. So everything's going to taste like it's because it's got a lot of CO2 in it and you're not degassing it. Everything's going to taste like a soda or like a carbonated beverage, or a champagne-y type bubbly, because or a beer, right? Because it's not been degassed. Yeah, you're gonna. It's just unique flavors. You get a lot of different flavors, and you can do the same mash with different temperatures, get different flavors. Different yeast get different flavors. I mean, there's so many variables that can cause stresses, and stresses create flavors, and most bad, sometimes good, right? So we talk about how to properly stress, but you have to be dialed in. It's not something that a beginner really chat, um, but there is definitely specific ways that you can stress your yeast and get different flavors. We talk about higher temperature. Alan and I talked about using, higher temperatures. I didn't realize that high. So he's going way above and creating some interesting esters and to create some fruity notes and some different floral notes at a higher temperature that you can get, but you have to know what you're doing, right? And it's not something that I would preach to just beginners, right? You want to learn to set the standards. Once you have your standards set, then you can experiment and deviate from that standard to see how it compares to that standard. So you want to develop your base, and then once you have your base and have that down to a science, damn, that moth didn't die. Then you can deviate from that, and you'll always have something to compare it to. So, and that's the scientific procedures and process. All right, it's 11. I got to get off here. Actually, I'm 30 minutes late. I was supposed to. I got to talk to my daughter. She's. Yeah. Next time, do it. I'm trying to think of the scientific, but it's the base. It's the one that you set as your base that will be done in a specific way, and that way, when you deviate from that, you can always have that comparison to your base. And part of the scientific method. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, that's the hardest part, consistency, getting consistency. And the more scientific you make it, the more consistent you can make it. And that's why I try to preach the science is because if you can match exactly these temperatures, these amounts, these everything, the pH, once you eliminate all these variables, you can get more exacting, and then you can create more predictable results and consistency. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. It's 11 bells. We're going to have to get out of here. It's been a great 3 hours with y'all. Definitely miss y'all this weekend, and we will see you guys and gals back here on Tuesday at 8. And that will be March the 3rd. March the 3rd. There's something up with that date. I don't know. What is that? March the 3rd. Is that, let's see here. What is that? Is that St. Patty's Day this year? No, it's Purim. It's a Jewish holiday. It's World Wildlife Day and National Anthem Day. So maybe we'll sing the national anthem or something. And it observes the World Hearing Day and Peach Blossom Day. So we'll see y'all on Peach Blossom Day, or National Anthem Day, March the 3rd. When is? Yeah, Patty's Day 17th. So yeah, I was thinking it was earlier than that. 17th. Anyway. All right. So it's good seeing everybody. And we will see you all Tuesday the 3rd. Everybody have a great week and weekend. And I'm not sure what the militia got going on Friday. Let me look at the calendar here real quick and see. So let's see. This will be the 27th. That'll be the shit show. So I guess, and I'll be there, Friday. So yeah, we'll be on the shit show Friday. But we will not be here Saturday. So those that like to tune into the shit show and talk about anything and want to jump on there, tune in. Until then, I guess we'll see you all next Tuesday. Everybody have a great weekend. If I don't see you on the shit show, we'll see you next Tuesday the 3rd. Until then, peace out, shine on, love y'all, appreciate you, and have a great weekend.